Chapter 5:12. Indeed. As a martial artist, being seriously injured is definitely not a reason for not being able to fight again. Such a voice turned into an echo, and in an instant, it filled the entire embarrassing scene and reached the ears of Noah and Warban. Furthermore, it was a voice that was filled with an awe-inspiring and shocking deterrence that could be detected by anyone. However, it was exceptionally clear and sweet, like the melodious sound of a zither. It was a voice that was pleasing to the eyes and the heart. From this, it could be judged that the owner of this voice was definitely an extremely charming woman. However, when he heard this voice, Warban slightly widened his eyes, revealing a look of disgust that Noah had not seen from the beginning until now. He turned his head and looked at the top of a nearby building. Before Warban turned his head, Noah had already looked in that direction. He saw that at the top of the building, a beautiful figure was standing there. It was definitely not an exaggeration to use the adjective peerless to describe an extremely beautiful girl. The girl had jet black hair and was wearing a Han Chinese dress. Outside the Han Chinese dress, there was a top with long sleeves and a bottom that flowed like a long skirt. It looked very similar to a kimono, but it had an otherworldly and ethereal feeling that a normal kimono would not have. If a word had to be used to describe it, it would be like a fairy's feather weave. The girl wearing this gorgeous dress indeed had the beauty of a fairy. She looked down at Noah and Warban, who were confronting each other, and her red lips moved slightly, letting the beautiful sound of a zither once again reverberate in the surroundings. "I've seen a good duel, Marquis, and the foreign Rakshasa king. You're still young, but your martial prowess is not inferior to ours. It's not an exaggeration to praise you as a genius, but we're all kings of the same rank. Even if I'm the undefeated king of martial arts who dominates the martial arts world, it would be too rude to judge you casually. However, I, Luo Tzuilian, have acknowledged you, and that's the greatest glory in the world." Undoubtedly, the voice was sweet and clear, and the beautiful girl with black hair exuded an unusually majestic and domineering aura. Even her words were full of grandeur that others did not have, as if no matter what she said, she had a confidence that far surpassed Erica's. Such a beautiful girl appeared at the top of the building in a lofty manner. Noah aside, a fierce light bloomed in Warban's eyes. "You're here too. The martial arts king of China. Long time no see, Marquis Warban." The girl stood in the wind and said to Warban in a dignified manner, "It was my mistake not to imprint the news of my arrival in this country into your memory in advance, but your duel with the foreign Rakshasa king made my heart surge, so I'll forgive your rudeness. You're still the same as before, so narcissistic that it makes me want to vomit." Perhaps it was because the girl in front of him knew that he was at a disadvantage in the duel with Noah, and that he had even died once, but Warban's originally intellectual appearance became slightly rough, and his words were full of irritation. This allowed Noah to confirm the identity of the beautiful girl. "Luo Tzuilian, the martial arts king of China. The only supreme martial artist who can contend with Marquis Warban." "That's right. The foreign Rakshasa king. Write down my name. It will never be extinguished in your heart." The martial arts king of China turned her beautiful eyes and looked at Noah. "My surname is Luo, my name is Tzuilian, and my courtesy name is Hao. I am the leader of the Holy Church of China, the undefeated king who reigns at the peak of martial arts, the unparalleled supreme martial artist in the world. My martial arts are unparalleled, and my bravery is unparalleled in the world. In the days to come, you'll definitely recognize this." After Italy's invincible sword king and the most ancient devil king, the world's most ferocious devil sect leader finally appeared in front of Noah. He was second only to Warban in terms of age, and was China's God Slayer, who was Warban's enemy. He was the martial arts king who dominated the martial arts world on the land like a sleeping dragon. His martial arts were unparalleled in the world, and no one could compare to him. "Luo Hao. It was said that those who had seen the martial arts king had their eyes blinded, and those who had heard the voice of the leader of the martial arts world would have their eardrums pierced. The most ferocious demon. The one and only tyrant. This was the rumor Noah had heard about Luo Hao. The beautiful girl in front of him, who looked to be only 17 or 18 years old, was that tyrant. If it were not for the fact that he knew that one could not judge a book by its cover, and clearly felt the majesty and domineering aura of the other party, Noah would never believe that this otherworldly-looking girl could be such a ferocious devil sect leader. What are you doing here? Luo Hao. Warban was speechless. Could it be that you're also here for the battle with Athena? I, Luo Hao, have long retreated to the mountains and forests, and I don't care about the world. How can a mere queen of the heavenly realm, who has not yet fully recovered, make me, Luo Hao, reappear in the martial arts world and show off my martial arts? Luo Hao's tone became cold as she said this. However, perhaps it's because I've retreated to the mountains for too long, but now, the reputation of the martial arts king can no longer deter those rascals. If I can't make this demon pay with his life, Luo Hao, am not worthy of being the leader of the Holy Church. Noah frowned. What do you mean by that? I see. Warban rolled his eyes and seemed to understand something. He sneered. Athena went to your territory to look for you and provoked you, so you're here, right? Humph. Luo Hao snorted coldly. How dare she barge into my territory and openly provoke me, Luo Zuilian, in front of my followers? Even if she's the former queen of the heavenly realm, I'll cut off her head. Hearing this, Noah finally understood. Just like Warban, Athena had also come to Luo Hao. However, the situation was different from Warban's. If Athena lured Warban to Italy by using the result of fighting with him as bait, then Athena lured Luo Hao here by means of provocation. Although they had just met, Noah was sure that Luo Hao was definitely a person with an extremely high self-esteem, self-confidence, and narcissism. Luo Hao would definitely chase after such an arrogant person as long as she was slightly provoked, even if she had to run to the end of the world. Luo Hao looked at Noah and gave a command directly to Noah. How can I convince my followers if I can't bring Athena's head back to Lushan? You've insulted me, Luo Zuilian. So, devil king of a foreign country, I heard that you have a god relic that can lure the goddess who insulted me here. Give it to me. Noah narrowed his eyes as a cold gleam flickered in his eyes when he heard Luo Hao's command. However, before Noah could do anything, another voice broke into the scene. Oh. Have they started fighting? I knew it. A man carrying a crude, mass-produced knight sword walked over slowly from far away with such a relaxed voice. He glanced at Noah, Luo Hao, and Warban one after another and laughed heartily. Then, can you count me in as well? Who else could it be apart from Tony? Salbar Tony. The murderous gleam in Warban's eyes grew, but there was a cold smirk on his face. How dare you show up in front of me? Salbar Doni. Luo Hao frowned as if she had thought of something. I see. You're the king who's not mature at all except for his sword skill that's close to mine. Why are you here? Even Noah was stunned. Aren't you in Rome? Isn't it boring over there? Tony replied without hesitation. His face and eyes were surging with battle lust. On the contrary, not only do you have Athena here, but you also have that old man over there. Now, even the wuxia from the east is here. With me here, it's a battle between 4 god slayers. No matter how I look at it, your side is more interesting, isn't it? Ha 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 ha. Warban laughed out loud. Great. That's great. All the enemies that I must defeat are here. There's nothing better than this. Are you guys going against my order of pardon? Luo Hao spoke too. You deserve to die 1,000 times over. Come on. Come on. Tony carried his sword and shouted excitedly. "It's okay if all of you come at me together." Noah forced a smile as he sensed the tension in the air. 4 kings gathered together to kill each other because of Athena's plan. The goddess of wisdom lived up to her name indeed. Chapter 5:13. When Noah, Luohao, Warban, and Doni, who stood at the top of the world and were regarded as kings by everyone in the magic world, appeared on the same battlefield and fell into a tense state, Erica and Liliana, who were on the rooftop of a building far away, were dumbfounded. It was definitely rare for the 2 most talented prodigies in Italy to lose their composure like this. However, it wasn't Erica and Liliana's fault because the scene before their eyes was too terrifying. The oldest and most capricious demon king in the world, who could barge into the palace of the former Queen of England for his own pleasure and could also kidnap others to satisfy himself, declaring war on a king. Standing at the top of the Wuline, his martial arts were unparalleled, and no one could defeat him. However, he was the fiercest and most brutal king of Wuxia. Armed with a magical sword, he was simple-minded and could disregard everything for the sake of battle. He might even be willing to plunge the entire Italy into turmoil. Also, he was the new king who had recently been reincarnated and had the ability to defeat the King of Sword, the oldest demon king, and was recognized by the leader of the Wuling Alliance of China. He was the new king who had brought huge losses to Italy. Putting aside how the 4 of them felt, from the perspective of Erica and Liliana, who knew about their glorious deeds, it was as if the 4 most terrifying demon kings in the world had gathered together and were ready to turn the world upside down. Erica. Liliana's expression could only be described as dull. "What should we do?" "What do you mean?" Erica laughed bitterly. "We can only stop them, right?" The duel between 2 kings had already led to all kinds of consequences, not to mention 4 kings fighting in a melee. Erica had no doubt that once the 4 of them went all out, this city would definitely be razed to the ground, and even the surrounding cities would be affected, causing turmoil in the entire Italy. Naturally, Liliana understood this as well. But how should we stop them?" Erica was at a loss for words. How? How could they stop them? There were only 7 kings in the world. Now, 4 of the 7 kings had gathered together and were about to engage in a chaotic battle. Unless the remaining 3 kings came together and stood on the same side, no one could stop all of this. But let's not talk about whether the remaining 3 kings were here or not. Even if they were found, there was an 80% chance that they wouldn't really form a battle line to stop those 4 people. Instead, they would join in and cause more trouble, right? After all, at the end of the day, the God Slayers were just a bunch of troublemakers, right? 4 kings, and such special ones at that. Erica couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. Could it be that the end of the world will come true in the hands of those 4 people? With that, a voice answered Erica's complaint. "I don't know if the 4 kings can cause the end of the world, but if this continues, the end of Italy may really come." As she said that, a young girl appeared on the rooftop not far from Erica and Liliana without warning. Her delicate, pretty face was filled with worry. Seeing this young lady, Erica and Liliana were both stunned. "Princess Alice." "Greetings, both of you." Princess Alice, who used to maintain the elegant demeanor of a noble lady, only had a wry smile on her face at this moment. "Like the 2 of you, I think that this situation still has to be stopped. Otherwise, not to mention whether the world will usher in the end, Italy will definitely become very terrible." "Your Highness, don't the Sage Parliament have any countermeasures?" Liliana stepped forward and asked anxiously. "Your Highness, the Sage Parliament specializes in researching the God Slayers, right? They should have a countermeasure, right? If it were the other kings, there might be a way, but among the 4 kings here, His Excellency Noah, Marquis Warban, and cult leader Luo Hao are also here, so it's a little difficult," Alice said worriedly. Our sage parliament's research on the god slayers began in the latter half of the 19th century, and Marquis Warban and cult leader Luo Hao both became ancient demon kings of the god slayers before that. Currently, the recorded information about the authority of these two kings is still lacking. Without enough information, we can't deal with it. His Excellency Noah has only recently become king, so there's also insufficient information about his authority. Upon hearing that, Erica and Liliana looked at each other. There's no other way. Erica sighed. Although this is suspected of betraying the king, in the current situation, it's better to reveal it. Princess Alice, we know about the authority of the king beside us. Liliana understood. After hesitating for a moment, she chose to reveal it. That king has two authorities. One is the ability of the 10 avatars that he usurped from Welslana, the god of victory, and the other is the control of the storm, lightning, and sky that he usurped from god King Mekhl. The ability of the 10 avatars and the control of the storm, lightning, and sky. Alice, who had no idea that Liliana had given the wrong information, pondered and then shook her head. Forget about the control of the storm, lightning, and sky. But since His Excellency Noah has usurped the ability of the 10 avatars of Welslana, then there should be quite serious restrictions and conditions for using the 10 avatars. The restrictions should be that they can only be used once in a certain period of time. And if all 10 avatars are usurped, there will definitely be conditions for using them. It's not surprising that there are conditions like under which avatar can be used. Without knowing these conditions in advance, there will be limited countermeasures. As expected of the former chairman of the Sage Parliament who specialized in studying the Godslayers, she had a full understanding of all aspects of the authority of the Godslayer. But it was a pity that for Noah, an existence who was out of the norm, this understanding was specially used to break through. At this moment, the distressed Liliana's expression suddenly froze, and a dim light glowed in her eyes. Divine spark. Cut. Golden sword. Seeing Liliana suddenly murmur absent-mindedly, Alice and Erica were pleasantly surprised. Spirit vision. Erica's eyes lit up. Liliana must have gotten some hint. As soon as she finished speaking, the dim light in Liliana's eyes disappeared, and her expression became joyful. Princess. Erica. I saw it. If we want to stop this disaster, we can only rely on the golden sword. The king's golden sword. The sword of gold. Both Alice and Erica were stunned. Among the 10 avatars of Welslana, there is the avatar of the human warrior holding the golden sword. That sword can cut through the divine spark and seal the authority of the Godslayer, Liliana quickly explained. My spirit vision saw the image of the king using the golden sword to seal the authority of Marquis Warban, Hierarch Luo Hao, and Sarbar, and defeat the other 3 kings in one fell swoop. Defeating 3 kings in one go. Alice drew in a breath of cold air. Even Erica couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Liliana, you're kidding, right? It can't be wrong. That king has the power to defeat the other 3 kings in one fell swoop. Liliana said solemnly. It's just that to use this power, one needs to understand the target of the authority that the kings have usurped. Otherwise, it can't be used. Alice and Erica finally let out a sigh of relief. If there was really such a trump card that could be used at will, then Noah would be too terrifying. Fortunately, there were conditions for using it. If that's the case, then we might be able to stop it. Alice was overjoyed. If His Excellency Noah defeats all the other 3 kings, then we can avoid the losses caused by the continuation of the battle. But that king shouldn't know the authority of the other 3 kings that well, right? Erica couldn't help but ask. Because Sarbar is the leader of the Alliance of Italy, the Italian magic associations basically know the true form of the king's authority. But what about the authority of Marquis Warban and Hierarch Luo Hao? Our sage council has so far confirmed 4 of the marquee authority, Alice said. My spirit vision also saw the 2 most commonly used authority of hierarch Luohao, Liliana quickly said. Then Erica said subconsciously. How should we tell this information to the king? As soon as she said that, the atmosphere suddenly changed. Chapter 5:14. Chi. The sea of fire with an astonishingly high temperature continued to burn the surroundings of the battlefield, melting the buildings like candles. Everything that was caught in the sea of fire was reduced to scorched earth. At the edge of the sea of fire, 4 people with flame-like curse power were standing in 4 different positions, confronting each other. The air was filled with a terrifying sense of oppression, which was even more creepy than the sea of fire. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation. Endless Fantasy Translation. Noah's gaze swept across Warban, Luohao, and Doni, and he felt a little helpless. Noah really did not expect that Athena would lure Warban, Luohao, and even Doni in order to get the Stone of Gorgon and start a big battle around him. Could it be that the goddess had actually lured the rest of the gods' layers over? And would they jump out like this later? Noah could not help but have such a thought. But no matter what, it was now a situation where throwing away the Gorgon stone would not end the dispute. Although Warban verbally acknowledged Noah's victory and gave him the Gorgon stone, which originally belonged to Noah as a trophy, but if Noah handed over the Gorgon stone, Warban, who wanted to fight with Athena, would not hesitate to snatch it. Not to mention Luohao. Because of Athena's provocation, the extremely narcissistic Wuxia king went straight to Noah and wanted Noah to hand over the Gorgon stone in order to make Athena take the initiative to find her. Presumably, no matter who got the Gorgon stone, Luohao would keep snatching it until she got it. As for Doni, he was a fool. Even without Athena, if he knew that Warban and Luohao's goal was the Gorgon stone, he would have happily snatched the stone from Noah's hands and shouted loudly, "Take me down if you want it." In short, the scene had become extremely chaotic, and it was basically all in Athena's favor. If Warban snatched the Gorgon stone from Noah, he would not mind giving it to Athena, because he would only fight with Athena at full strength. And with Luohao, with her self-esteem, all Athena had to do was say something like, "As the king of the martial arts world, do you want to fight with me who has not yet fully recovered?" And that would definitely provoke Luohao. After all, for Luohao, if she had something that could restore the enemy to full strength, and the enemy could not fully recover because of it, then she would be taking advantage of the situation. In this way, Luohao, with her high self-esteem and narcissism, would definitely give the Gorgon stone to Athena, and let Athena recover to fight with her. Right? Doni, for the same reason Warban. In other words, among the people present, except for Noah, as long as the rest of them obtained the Gorgon stone, they would eventually return to Athena. Only Noah would not care whether Athena would fully recover or not, and choose the most effective way to deal with Athena. It could only be said that Athena was really the goddess of wisdom. A group of problematic children, all of them are here. What did I do wrong? Noah rubbed his eyebrows and looked around at the other 3 of his kind. After a while, he finally made a decision. "Hey, idiot," Noah said to Doni, who was not far away. "Compared to a free-for-all, you should prefer a one-on-one duel, right?" "That's true. Although a free-for-all is good, a one-on-one duel is more satisfying." Doni was startled, but he immediately reacted. Hey, what do you mean by idiot? Then how about we form a temporary team?" Noah ignored Doni's protest and said without hesitation. "One for each of us, a fair duel, no problem, right?" "Oh." Doni raised his eyebrows, glanced at Warban and Luohao, and then laughed. 2 of the oldest demon kings versus 2 of the youngest demon kings. Interesting, isn't it? "You 2 brats, are you going to beat me?" Warban's evil eyes flashed with green light. "I don't mind playing with you guys. You have to be clear, I, Luo Hao, and Warban are enemies, and we will never join forces to fight against the two Rakshasa kings. Luo Hao said without hesitation. It's your honor to fight with me, Luo Hao. My bravery is unparalleled in the world. Even if the two of you attack me together, Luo Zuelian will show off her martial arts skills that can rival thousands of soldiers and horses, and leave the mark of defeat on your bodies. Don't misunderstand, we don't mean to let you join forces, it's just a one-on-one duel. Noah glanced at Luo Hao. It's only fair to duel under equal conditions, but if the conditions aren't equal, then even if you show off your bravery, you won't be able to show off your spirit. Although I'm not from your hometown, I know that you Chinese respect your opponent's spirit of martial arts. Noah smiled indifferently. The unparalleled leader of Wulin, the invincible king of Wuxia, let me take a good look at your spirit. Ha! Luo Hao smiled for the first time since she appeared, and that smile was truly beautiful. As the king of a foreign country, you have some knowledge of the martial arts ethics of our Chinese Wulin. No matter how good your martial arts skills are, as long as you have the heart of a Wulin, you're worthy of my respect. Very well, as the supreme of the Wulin, let me experience the martial arts skills of the king of a foreign country. After she finished speaking, the spell power around Luo Hao vibrated, and Luo Hao suddenly disappeared on the spot. Roar! Almost at the same time, Bio, who had been guarding behind Noah, let out a high-pitched and beautiful roar towards the sky, turning the roar into a substantial shockwave that shook in all directions. Pang 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 pang. Wherever the shockwave passed, the ground suddenly burst open and shattered. After fusing with the incarnation of Mountain Boar, Bio not only gained attack power and destructive power, but also the ability to send out shockwaves. When combined with Crush, the shockwave sent out by Bio could shatter everything in the world, just like Donnie's unstoppable magic sword. There was nothing that couldn't be shattered. Under such circumstances, the shockwave that shook out directly shattered everything in its path, including the ground, gravel, and even the airflow, and spread out. At this time, Luo Hao's figure suddenly appeared at the edge of the shockwave. Obviously, Luo Hao was going to directly attack Noah. However, Noah noticed it and let Bio send out a shockwave that could shatter everything, forcing Luo Hao out. Well done, foreign Rakshasa king, then I don't need to be polite. Looking at the incoming shockwave, Luo Hao took a deep breath and then suddenly shouted out coldly. Last year, I fought Sang Gonyuan, this year, I fought Song He. I washed the soldiers of Karaxpa Xinu, I let the horses loose in the snow of Tianshan, I fought in the Long March, the three armies all aged, that was the spirit of words that sounded like a song. Who? The language spirit that transformed into a beautiful song carried a strong gust of wind, blowing away everything around Luo Hao. Xiongnu slaughter for farming, since ancient times, only white bones can be seen in the yellow sand field. The Qin family built a city to hide, the Han family still has the fire of war, the fire of war burns endlessly, there is no time for war. As Luo Hao's voice continued to reverberate, the strong wind gradually turned into a gale. The gale gradually turned into a storm, spreading out like the shockwave that was blowing towards them. Fighting to death in the field, the defeated horse cries to the heavens, the crow pecks people's intestines, flies up to the withered branches, the shockwave that could shatter everything suddenly collided with the storm that was expanding in all directions. Dong! With a trembling sound, the two shockwave-like waves collided with each other, and like a tide that surged towards a reef, they crazily slammed against each other. The shockwave that could shatter everything shattered the oncoming storm. However, the storm seemed to be endless, turning into a solid barrier that guarded in front of Luo Hao. Soldiers are reckless, generals are empty, they know that soldiers are lethal weapons, saints have no choice but to use them. Luo Hao's aura became more and more intense, and the curse power on her body became more and more violent, causing the storm to continuously blow. Ha! At a certain moment, Luo Hao suddenly shouted. The storm that was blowing towards them suddenly exploded. Dong! A terrifying shockwave shook the air. Chapter 5:15. Boom! It was like a star in the universe had exploded. Although there was no intense fire, the shockwave that could shatter everything and the storm that shook out along with the ballad turned into the most direct collision, violently surging in all directions. Bang! 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 Wherever the shock wave passed, whether it was the ground, obstacles, or buildings, everything was blasted apart in a muffled sound. They were smashed into pieces and carried away by the shock wave like flying ash, striking in all directions like a tornado. Looking down from above, one would see that the two shock waves that were colliding with each other suddenly exploded, as if trying to take away the shock wave that could shatter everything. The two shock waves mixed together and vibrated in all directions. Under such circumstances, a terrifyingly huge crater was formed in a short span of 2 to 3 seconds. Although it was not as big as the huge crater created by Noah a while ago, this huge crater was still hundreds of meters wide. The surrounding high-rise buildings and residential buildings were all blown away. It was extremely violent. Luo Hao and Warban were obviously not the same type of godslayer. Even though Warban also had a stormy wind and raging waves that could turn an entire city into a hell ravaged by violent thunder, tornadoes, and torrential rain, causing great destruction, Warban generally preferred to use the three authorities of Sodom's pupil, pack of greedy wolves, and servant of death's cage. After all, as long as he had the Sodom's pupil, he could deal with the small fries easily. The pack of greedy wolves, and the servant of death's cage, could both summon Warban's servants and make them his servants. Warban only needed to wait for his hounds and servants to complete the task he gave them. He did not need to waste time and effort to do it himself. In addition, these three authorities were not the kind that focused on destruction. Therefore, unless Warban deliberately carried out destruction himself, it would generally not cause much damage. But Luo Hao was different. The leader of the Eastern Wulin obviously focused more on the two aspects of power and destruction. Being paired with Noah was simply the worst match between the two kings of destruction. Alice, Erica, and Liliana were right to be worried. If these two invincible kings of destruction were allowed to continue fighting, then the city and even the whole of Italy might really be finished. Not to mention that Warban and Doni were also there. Woo dash. At this moment, Warban had transformed into a huge werewolf again. He let out a ferocious roar and pounced in Tony's direction. Are you hurt? Tony's sword-wielding hand had already turned into a steel-like luster. Looking at the giant wolf pouncing at him, he seemed to be able to see through Warban's condition with a single glance. Seriously, that guy Noah actually threw such a dangerous guy to me. It seemed that Tony also understood how dangerous the God Slayer was when he was injured. However, Tony still carried his knight's sword that was surrounded by a large amount of curse power and charged forward without hesitation. Like a brave hunter facing a ferocious beast, the man and the wolf engaged in a fierce battle. On the other side, the collision between Noah and Luo Hao's shockwaves continued. Bang! 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 The two shockwaves kept colliding with each other, not to be outdone, causing the space in front of Noah and Luo Hao to be filled with continuous explosions and violent gusts of wind. The space was on the verge of collapsing. Although Bio's shockwaves could shatter everything, every time they shattered Luo Hao's shockwaves, Luo Hao would immediately sing a new ballad and set off a new shockwave. It was as if she was building the strongest invisible barrier, firmly blocking Noah's shockwaves that could shatter everything. However, in this way, the shockwaves set off by Luo Hao's ballad could not break through Noah's shockwaves that could shatter everything and reach Noah. It's really surprising, foreign Rakshasa king. I didn't expect that my dragon roar and tiger roar technique would not have any effect. This is the first time. Although she said this, Luo Hao felt happy from the bottom of her heart. A beautiful smile appeared on her flower-like beautiful face. With that said, Luo Hao's tall and slender body overflowed with a large amount of curse power. The pinnacle of martial arts is the combination of strength and skill. Luo Hao's sweet and clear voice reverberated in the air. I, Luo Hao, am the supreme master of martial arts under the heavens. There is no one in the martial arts world who doesn't know of my martial arts. I already have the strongest skill, and the Vajra divine art that I stole from the gods also gives me the ultimate strength. Therefore, with the ultimate combination of strength and skill, Luo Zuelian can become an unparalleled martial artist in the world. Foreign Rakshasa King, come and experience my Luo Hao's pinnacle of martial arts. Saying such a sentence, Luo Hao lightly lifted her foot and stepped forward. Bang! In an instant, the instant Luo Hao's foot landed, the ground that she stepped on exploded with a loud rumble, causing radioactive cracks to spread out, almost shattering the entire ground. Then, Luo Hao spat out a word. Quick! With that said, Luo Hao disappeared from her place. Seeing this, Noah's pupils shrank and almost subconsciously took a step back. Swish! At this moment, Luo Hao suddenly appeared in front of Noah. She raised her palm and waved it out. As if something heavy directly hit the air, Luo Hao's palm actually made the air burst with a sonic boom and fell on the position where Noah was standing a second ago. Noah had no doubt that if Luo Hao's palm hit his body, then it would definitely be like being hit by the super high-level destruction magic, crush, and his whole body would explode into a mass of minced meat. Usurping the authority from the gods, Vajra Herculean divine arts, plus my own unique skill, 12 flying phoenix divine palms, this is the pinnacle of Luo Zuelian's martial arts. You can try to block it. After saying that, Luo Hao raised her pair of soft, fair, and beautiful palms. She rushed forward and slapped Noah, who had taken a step back, once again. All evildoers, be afraid of my power. Now, I shall obtain the majesty of 10 mountains, the strength of 100 rivers, and the strength of 1,000 giant dragons. The majestic me shall raise the ferocious power to slay dragons. At the moment when Luo Hao made her move, Noah, who was already mentally prepared, also focused his eyes. The stone plate in his heart turned to the pattern of the Dragon Man, and used the Dragon Man incarnation, letting the majestic power of the curse sweep out from his body. His body tensed up, and turned into a powerful physique comparable to that of a giant dragon. Then, Noah clenched his fist, and all the power in his body poured into his clenched fist. Instead of retreating, he went forward and faced the incoming terrifying palm with a punch. Noah's heavy fist and Luo Hao's palm collided in the next moment, stirring up a fierce wind and a muffled sound that made people's hearts shrink. Under the Dragon Man incarnation, Noah could obtain a body comparable to that of a giant dragon and go beyond intuition and wildness, which could be called a divine fighting ability. Luo Hao said that she had the ultimate strength and skill, which was the so-called Vajra Herculean divine arts and 12 flying phoenix divine palms. With the divine fighting ability, Noah's skill should be able to match Luo Hao's skill. However, Luo Hao's strength seemed to be superior to Noah's strength, with a body comparable to that of a giant dragon. At that moment, Noah only felt a terrifying force pass from Luo Hao's palm through her fist and into his body, making Noah feel as if he was hit by something. His body trembled, and he stepped back again and again. Ha! At this time, Luo Hao was not going to let him go. The power of the curse in her palms rose crazily. She stepped out with her left foot, and her body was in a semicircle. Her right palm was like a long whip, fiercely pressing towards Noah's chest. Shio! Under the influence of the terrifying power, Luo Hao's palm strike tore apart the air and the ground, and it also drew a mysterious trajectory, as fast as lightning falling towards Noah's chest, bringing with it a deep sound that pierced the eardrums. Chapter 5:16. Whoosh! Her slender palm carried an extremely terrifying power. Amidst the sharp sound of a sonic boom, she ruthlessly pressed her palm against Noah's chest without hesitation. Noah, who had already fought with Luo Hao before, knew that even if he used the incarnation of the Dragon Man, and had a body comparable to that of a giant dragon, his own strength was still no match for the authority of Luo Hao's Vajra Vigor technique. That should be the same as the incarnation of the giant, which could bring the user a terrifying and monstrous strength, right? Although it was not as exaggerated as the incarnation of the giant, Luo Hao's Vajra Vigor technique was obviously very terrifying. That monstrous strength, if it hit a building, it would probably shatter the entire building. The main thing that the incarnation of the Dragon Man strengthened was not the arm strength, but the physique, close combat, and the ability to slay dragons. It was simply no match for the Vajra Vigor technique, which only strengthened the arm strength. After all, the Dragon Man incarnation could only show its horror when dealing with dragon-type creatures. This made Noah once think of changing to the incarnation of the giant, but he immediately gave up on that idea. If Noah used the incarnation of the giant, then the giant, which combined the power of the two highest level gods, would definitely only be above Luo Hao, who used the Vajra Vigor technique. There was absolutely no reason for it to be weaker. However, in that way, Noah would also lose the divine skill of the Dragon Man incarnation, which was far more powerful than intuition and wildness. He would lose the skill that could match Luo Hao. Only at this time could Noah realize how terrifying Luo Hao's martial arts were. At least, after Luo Hao used the 12 flying phoenix palm, Noah would sometimes even be dazed by the miraculous trajectory of the white palms, and almost lose his ability to react. To be able to withstand Luo Hao's palm, it was completely dependent on the divine skill of the Dragon Man incarnation, which was far more powerful than intuition and wildness. It allowed Noah's body to naturally react, and he used his extraordinary intuition and wildness to block Luo Hao's palm strike. Therefore, once Noah deactivated his draconian form, he would lose his instincts and wildness that were no different from foresight. He would definitely be struck by Luo Hao's palm and at the very least, be severely injured. So, Noah gave up on the idea of removing the draconid avatar. Instead, he used enhanced magic. Clang! Magic patterns that looked like electric wires immediately climbed up Noah's arm and strengthened Noah's arm strength. Whoosh! Luo Hao's palm strike struck towards Noah's chest with an irresistible force, like a hot knife through butter. Under the control of his extraordinary intuition and wild nature, Noah's body once again reacted naturally. It was as if he knew the path of Luo Hao's palm, as if he could predict the future. He rotated his hand into a fist and punched out. Chi! Noah's punch didn't have too much momentum, but that punch also brought about a violent whirlwind, as if it was covered with a glove made of wind, and it loudly collided with Luo Hao's palm strike. Bang! The heavy fist and the ethereal palm collided heavily once again, causing the terrifying power that permeated the air to sweep out at the same time. It was like a needle against an awl, neither giving way to the other, crazily attacking the other's body. Bang! The ground where Noah and Luo Hao were standing was directly shattered by the violent collision between the two. Huge cracks spread out from under the two people's feet to the entire deep pit. After using enhanced magic to strengthen himself, Noah's strength finally managed to barely keep up with Luo Hao's strength. Good! Luo Hao said excitedly. It seemed that her fighting spirit had finally been aroused. Not only was her whole body filled with a terrifying curse power, but she also rose with an imposing manner that looked down on the world. In the next moment, Luo Hao's palm strike abruptly stopped. Just as one palm was retracted halfway, the other hand turned into a palm and struck out with a whistling sound. It brought along afterimages and ear-piercing sonic booms as it shrouded Noah as fast as lightning. The palm wind that was filled with a frightening strength blew onto Noah's body, causing the clothes on Noah's body to tightly stick to his body. A pair of delicate white hands that were incomparably frightening were rapidly magnified in his eyes. This wild and violent attack caused a ruthless expression to appear in Noah's eyes. He clenched his right fist tightly and threw it out punch after punch. Swish, 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 swish. The sky was suddenly filled with fist shadows and palm shadows, all with astonishing power, and rushed out like a storm. Pang, 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 pang. The fist shadow and the palm shadow collided with each other in an overwhelming manner, causing waves of impact and explosions. This caused the entire ground to tremble violently at this moment. Some of the gravel even directly exploded into powder under the impact of the strong wind and scattered, causing smoke and dust to fill the air. Dong! In the huge pit filled with dust and fog, the ground was once again unable to bear the burden and collapsed. Immediately after, two figures flew out from the smoke and dust that filled the air. The soles of their feet brushed against the ground, drawing a gully that was over 100 meters long before they stabilized their figures. However, neither Noah nor Luo Hao moved their eyes away from each other for a moment. Even though there was a thick layer of smoke and a distance of over 100 meters, it was as if they could still see each other's eyes, flashing with a terrifying expression. After more than 200 years, Luo Zuilian, finally met someone who can truly match me in martial arts. Luo Hao's sweet and clear voice was full of excitement, making people clearly feel the excitement in her heart. Rakshasa king of a foreign country, if you were born in my land of China, then you would definitely be able to become a martial arts master who can compete with me for the position of the Wulin Alliance. Thinking of this, Luo Zuilian's heart surged, wishing that she was born in the same era as you. Those who were familiar with Luo Hao would definitely be shocked by Luo Hao's words. How many years has it been since Luo Hao acknowledged someone like this? However, regarding Luo Hao's acknowledgement, Noah shook his head. No, it's impossible for me to compete with you in terms of martial arts. You should be able to see that the reason I can compete with you in close combat is because of the power brought by authority. I don't have any skills that can truly match you. This was the truth. If it was swordsmanship, Noah, who has been training his swordsmanship since childhood, may be able to compete with Luo Hao. But in terms of fighting skills other than swordsmanship, Noah only learned martial arts, fighting, karate, taekwondo, and even military physical skills after entering the world of the Dark Bullet for more than a year. Naturally, it was impossible for him to compete with Luo Hao, who has been practicing martial arts for at least 200 years. To be able to fight with Luo Hao like that, it was entirely relying on the intuition and wild divine skills brought by the Dragon Man. His body naturally used those skills, and it was not the fighting skills that Noah learned himself. Don't belittle yourself. Luo Hao shook her head. My Vidra divine art is also the authority that was usurped from God, so I have the ultimate strength. So, even if your skills were also taken from God, it has now become your strength, that is yours. Saying so, the smile on Luo Hao's face became even more lovely and sweet. If you can't let it go, then take a look at the true essence of my Vidra divine art. Around Luo Hao's body, the blazing curse power began to rise, making Luo Hao's body rise up like a mirage. One strength defeats 10 skills, one strength suppresses 10 skills, one kick has the strength of 1,000 caddies, one foot settles the earth. With the help of the ballad-like words, the mirage-like illusion gradually became clear. My Vidra divine art not only can give me the ultimate arm strength, it can also summon the Vidra warriors to fight for me. As if to prove the authenticity of Luo Hao's words, two bald giants with a serious expression and exaggerated bulging muscles appeared in front of Luo Hao, emitting golden light. Come. Foreign Rakshasa King. It's time for you and me to decide who is better. Let's decide the winner with one blow. As soon as Luo Hao's voice fell, the two Vajra warriors stepped forward at the same time. With a roar, they stepped on the ground and assumed a sumo posture, glaring at Noah. Seeing this, the corner of Noah's mouth slowly hooked up. In the next moment, a huge amount of curse power gushed out from his body. With pleasure. Chapter 5:17. Humph. Ha. Standing in front of Luo Hao like two wall-like giants, the two giants let out a humph and ha respectively. The sound even shook the atmosphere and caused the space to hum. The spell power that constantly burned from Luo Hao's body like a thick river flowed into the bodies of the two Vajra warriors, causing the two Vajra warriors to exude an amazing aura. From this point alone, it could be seen that the strength of the two Vajra warriors was definitely above that of the mythical beasts, and could even rival the god of disobedience. To be honest, after beating Warban, the oldest and most powerful demon king in the world, half to death, Noah still had to deal with an opponent of the same level as him. He was more or less physically and mentally exhausted. However, the so-called God Slayer was a natural-born warrior, a king born to fight. Just like Warban, who became more dangerous after being injured, this fatigue not only did not make Noah have the slightest thought of giving up the battle, but he also felt that his whole body was filled with a strength that was stronger than adrenaline. In this case, Noah was confident that no matter how tired he was, he could exert 100% of his strength. At that moment, Noah took a deep breath. In his heart, the stone plate with 10 patterns on its outline rotated rapidly and pointed at the incarnation of the golden wolf again. You have violated the contract and brought evil to the world. The Lord said, sinners must be punished. Their backs will be crushed, their bones, their hair, and their brains dug out, and their blood and soil will be trampled on. If I can't get close to you, I will follow the Lord's words and give the person who violated the contract a hammer of destruction. Following this spirit of words that represented power and destruction was a roar that was so loud that it seemed to be transmitted directly from the sky. Roar. The unyielding melody of Bio, who had disappeared on the battlefield because Noah had transformed into the draconian incarnation, sounded once again. A dazzling golden space appeared behind Noah, and it gradually cracked open. A giant golden beast that was comparable in size to the two Vajra warriors struggled to emerge from it, and one of its front paws suddenly fell to the ground. Dong! Bio, whose body had transformed into a giant wolf that could cover the sky, stared at the two Vajra warriors with his gem-like beast eyes. A cold and ferocious nature flashed in his eyes. Roar! At the next moment, Bio let out a bellow, and a brilliant light burst out from his body. His body hair burned up like flames, and his entire body turned into a beam of light. It was as if he was a meteor that could penetrate through space, shooting toward the two Vajra warriors. Paw, 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 paw. Suddenly, wherever Bio turned into a giant bright meteor, the ground seemed to have been forcefully plowed by something. As the meteor moved forward, a long gully was created. Humph! Ha dash! The two Vajra warriors immediately let out a cold roar that shook the air. They actually extended their heavy palms toward the golden light spear that was rushing over. Immediately after, the dazzling meteor that pierced through the sky ruthlessly fell on the two Vajra warriors. Rumble! With a loud noise that shook the world, an incredible and violent shock wave spread out and instantly covered every corner of the surrounding space. Rumble! The ground that was destroyed beyond recognition, and it could be said that there was nothing else that could be destroyed, trembled like an earthquake. It was as if a volcano had erupted from the ground. As the ground cracked, scorching air pillars spurted out. Bang! 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 Amidst the sounds of explosions, what gushed out from the ground was not scorching hot magma, but water pillars that resembled hot springs. They brought with them waves as they broke through the ground from every corner. Accompanied by the violent wind that shook the ground, they sprinkled everywhere. Warban and Tony, who were battling not far away, were also swept up in the shock waves, and they reluctantly stopped. One of them used his forelimbs to tightly grab onto the ground, while the other stabbed his sword directly into the ground to barely stabilize himself. At the center of the impact, a competition that did not belong to humans was going on. Woo! 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 The two strong Vajra warriors roared angrily. Their forearms were like fortresses, firmly resisting the impact coming from the front. Blue veins popped out on each of their arms. Clearly, they were doing their best. Roar! 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 Bio, who had turned into a dazzling stream of light, also roared. Like a huge golden light pillar, he kept rushing forward. However, he was firmly blocked by the two Vajra warriors, and they were in a stalemate. Boz! 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 Under the terrifying impact, the space around Bio, who had turned into a meteor, and the two fortress-like Vajra warriors trembled like a boiling pot. If one were to say that the space would collapse in the next instant, no one would doubt it. Go! Luo Hao, who was protected by the two Vajra warriors behind him, couldn't help but groan under the impact. The curse power in his body was constantly extracted and poured into his feet to stabilize his body. Woo! Noah's entire body was also fluctuating with curse power. He extended one hand forward, and a gorgeous white light filled the air. The incoming terrifying impact was completely shattered into fragments of air, brushing past the two sides of his body and scraping behind Noah. This caused Noah's coat to violently rise up and down, making flapping sounds. Under such circumstances, at a certain moment, the stalemate was finally broken. Poochie! After such a tearing sound was heard, the two Vajra warriors, who had withstood the huge dazzling light pillar, had blue veins bulging on their arms. Under the effect of the huge impact, their skin and flesh were torn open. The two Vajra warriors had already reached their limit. Luo Hao's expression changed for the first time since she had appeared. Obviously, with Luo Hao's strong confidence in herself, she did not expect that her body would lose to Noah's Bio. Of course, if Bio had not fused Mountain Boar and Crush, he would not have been a match for the two Vajra warriors. Even dealing with one of them would be difficult. But now, after fusing Mountain Boar and Crush, Bio's strength had greatly increased. Therefore, even if his opponents were two Vajra warriors, who were comparable to the god of disobedience, Bio still had the upper hand. This made Noah's eyes shine brightly. Just as Noah was about to inject a large amount of curse power into Bio to defeat the two Vajra warriors, Noah felt it. Someone was approaching. Moreover, judging from the aura, it was someone Noah was familiar with. Noah turned his head reflexively and looked behind him. Soon, he saw it. 3 girls. It was Alice, Erica, and Liliana. You guys. Noah said in surprise. What are you doing here? As soon as he said that, Noah realized that something was wrong. He saw that Alice, Erica, and Liliana no longer had their elegant, gorgeous, and serious images. Every girl's pretty face was flushed red, and they were unwilling to even look at Noah. They were more or less bashful. This made Noah feel strange in his heart, but he couldn't understand it. This is a place that could be razed to the ground at any time. Noah could not help but raise his voice. No matter what happened to you, leave this place first. I don't have the confidence to protect you from 3 kings of the same level. Alice, Erica, and Liliana naturally understood what was going on, but they still had no intention of leaving. Their faces were filled with struggle. This was especially true for Alice, who had only met Noah once. She no longer looked like a noblewoman. Instead, she looked like a real young girl with a blushing face. This made Noah want to go crazy. What was the meaning of these three girls? Just as Noah was about to lose his temper, Erica took a deep breath and glared at Noah with a red face. I'm telling you, this can't be helped. We're only doing this because there's no other way. So, no matter what, you're not allowed to think nonsense. Ha! Noah was confused. At this moment, Erica suddenly stepped forward resolutely and kissed Noah on the lips. Chapter 5:18. When Erica kissed his lips, Noah was dumbfounded. At this moment, Noah's palm was still standing in front of his body. With the help of the brand new crush ability that could only be used when using the Golden Wolf incarnation, he crushed all the violent impacts into pure air currents that brushed past his body and blew backward. Because he still needed to control the crush ability and the Golden Wolf incarnation, Noah was directly kissed by Erica. At this moment, the roar of the violent impact waves and the collision between Bio and the two Vidra warriors in the center of the impact seemed to have disappeared and could no longer enter Noah's ears. Because even if it was only at this moment, Noah's mind had indeed become blank. If it weren't for the soft touch on his lips and the delicate fragrance from Erica's body that was so real, Noah might really think that he was dreaming. After all, even as a so-called king, Noah didn't think that Erica, with her strong self-confidence, would suddenly kiss him on the battlefield. It wasn't that Noah was too naive, but that this incident came too suddenly and was too shocking. He really kissed her. Miss Erica, wah. Wah wah wah. On the side, Alice and Liliana seemed to have known that Erica would do such a thing, but they still didn't expect it to be so sudden. Coupled with the extremely shocking scene, even though they were known as princesses and prodigies, the two girls still blushed. Then, Noah reacted. Just as he was about to push Erica away, Erica seemed to have noticed Noah's action. She reached out her hand first and put it around Noah's neck. As if she wanted to make Noah have no way out or make him regret it, she fixed her lips on his. Ugh! A scorching breath hit Noah's face. Without giving Noah a chance to react, Erica closed her eyes tightly and stuck out her tongue into Noah's mouth, entangling with Noah's tongue. At this moment, a torrent of memories suddenly surged into Noah's mind. Only then did Noah realize that Erica wasn't just kissing him blindly. Curse power was flowing in Erica's body, and it was transmitted to Noah's body through her lips, turning into memories and blending into Noah's mind. After maintaining this scene for an unknown amount of time, Erica finally parted her lips. Huff. Huff. Even Erica, who had charmed thousands of Italian men, couldn't help blushing at this moment. Her breathing was disordered, and her eyes were quite blurred. However, Erica quickly regained her composure and let go of Noah's neck. She took a step back abruptly and pointed at Noah with a flushed face as if she was trying to hide something. Don't let your imagination run wild. It's all for the whole of Italy. To defeat Marquis Warban, Bishop Luohao, and Minister Sarbaret. Hearing this, Noah came back to his senses and noticed the changes in his body. Because of the majestic memories brought by Erica's kiss, Noah discovered that in his heart, the outline of the stone plate connected to the images of the 10 incarnations was flashing. It was the image of a warrior holding a dazzling weapon in his hand. Needless to say, it was the image representing the incarnation of the warrior. Warrior, the incarnation from Wellerslana, the blaze that fused Noah's knight's sword and revolver. When he had sufficient knowledge of the opponent, he could weave spirits and form a golden sword to attack. If he used a god as his opponent, he must have sufficient knowledge of the god's own divinity. If he used a god slayer as his opponent, he must have sufficient knowledge of the authority used by the god slayer. To be able to cut off the divinity and seal the authority of the god slayer, even if the opponent was someone other than the god slayer and the god of disobedience, as long as he had sufficient knowledge of the opponent's ability, he could seal the opponent's ability. During the activation of the incarnation, the user's physical ability would also be improved, and at the same time, he would have the ability to see through the opponent's essence. In mythology, Wellerslana, the god of victory, had a golden sword directly linked to wisdom. It was said that the sword could cut off the divinity and bury any god. It was an important factor in Wellerslana's undefeated record. It was because of the golden sword of wisdom that could cut off any divinity that Wellerslana could become an undefeated legend and defeat the enemy gods. However, in order to use the sword, one must have sufficient knowledge of the origin of the opponent god. Therefore, the golden sword was the sword of wisdom. Noah, who had absorbed Wellerslana's power and usurped Wellerslana's authority, also inherited the sword of wisdom. Moreover, after fusing with the original knight's sword and revolver, the nature of the sword of wisdom became more thorough, and the target it could cut was no longer limited to gods. As long as one could understand the opponent's ability, they could cut it off. Previously, because he had learned the true identity of Athena from Erica and Liliana, Noah's warrior incarnation entered a state where it could be used. Now, because of the majestic memory brought by Erica's kiss, the warrior incarnation was once again active. But, why? Noah suppressed the impetuosity in his heart and laughed bitterly. Why do I have to do this? That's all for you to defeat the three kings. Erica seemed to have calmed down, but her pretty face was still flushed. Lily's spirit vision has discovered the ability of your warrior incarnation. As long as we tell you all the origins of the authority of Marquis Warban, Hierarch Luohao, and Salbaray, you can use this incarnation to defeat the three kings and avoid serious impact on Italy. Because it's an emergency now, there's no way to leisurely tell you so much about the authority. We can only choose to use the professor's magic to pass the knowledge into your mind. Alice's expression also seemed a little awkward. But the body of the God-slayer is too resistant to curses. It's almost immune to all curses. We can only use magic through kissing, directly into your body, so, there's a way to make curses work on the God-slayer. It turns out that curses directly into the body can work on the God-slayer. That's really a blind spot. But then, another question popped up in Noah's mind. The knowledge I obtained seems to be only from Tony, not from Warban and Luohao. That's none of my business. Erica turned her head away as if she was in a difficult position. I only know the origin of Salba Ray's authority. Marquis Warban's authority has always been a mystery. Only Princess Alice knows the details, and Lily used spirit vision to see the origin of Hierarch Luohao's authority. Hearing this, Noah's expression froze. In other words, Princess, Lily. Erica looked at Alice and Liliana with a faint smile on her face. It's your turn now. Alice and Liliana's expressions also froze, but the two of them were obviously mentally prepared in this regard before they came. Even though their faces were red, they still came to Noah with stiff bodies. Your Excellency Noah. Alice's pretty face was rosy as she greeted Noah. Please make sure this battle comes to an end. Please, Your Majesty, Liliana also said seriously with a red face. Please listen to our request and protect Italy. After saying that, Alice and Liliana closed their eyes at the same time as if they had accepted their fate, but their delicate bodies kept trembling, and they didn't dare to step forward. Unlike Erica, who was so determined, the two girls were still a little timid and hesitant. Looking at the two girls in front of him who were desperately trying to hold back and give up, their delicate bodies trembling slightly. They didn't even dare to look at him timidly. Noah felt extremely complicated. Putting Liliana aside, Noah had only met Alice once. Is it really okay to continue kissing like this? But both Alice and Liliana had mustered up their courage to barge into the battlefield at this dangerous moment. If he didn't respond to their feelings, how could he live up to their determination? With that thought in mind, Noah decided to go all out. Ugh, ugh, some subtle whimpers were drowned out by the whistling of the strong wind and the collision of the impact. Chapter 5:19. Phew, after an unknown amount of time, the violent storm that swept across the entire battlefield finally calmed down slowly. Splash! The water column that spurted out from the ground splashed on the ground with a clear sound of water splashing. It turned into streams of water that flowed back into the ground along the cracks. The smoke and dust gradually disappeared, revealing the current situation of the battlefield. Warband and Tony stood on both sides of the battlefield as if they were confronting each other, but their gazes did not stop on each other. Instead, they turned to look at the person standing in front of them. The golden wolf, Bio, had already returned to the size of a horse from his original giant wolf-like size. He stood in front of Noah, his pair of gem-like beast eyes staring straight ahead. Noah, Warband, Tony, and Bio looked at the two Vidra warriors who were standing shoulder to shoulder, but they were no longer standing upright. They were kneeling on one knee on the ground, and their arms had disappeared. Even half of their bodies seemed to have melted away, and they were badly damaged. Even so, the two Vidra warriors still stood in front of Luo Hao with unswerving determination. Even if they had lost their arms and half of their bodies, they would still protect Luo Hao to the end unless they were completely vaporized. Under such circumstances, Luo Hao stood behind the two Vidra warriors, unscathed. He was still as otherworldly and ethereal as ever. However, regardless of whether it was Noah, Warband, or Tony, they could all sense that Luo Hao's domineering aura had been weakened by more than half. Her domineering aura was still present, but her curse power had also become ethereal. Obviously, in order to block Bio's full blow, Luo Hao had also exerted all his strength, causing a lot of consumption. Perhaps Luo Hao's current strength should be the same as Warband's, and he could only exert 70% of his strength. That was not strange. After fusing the incarnation of the mountain boar, and the ability of crush, Bio could even seriously injure Warband with one blow, forcing Warband to choose to self-destruct and use his trump card, the power of resurrection. Although Luo Hao, who was on par with Warband, did not have the power of resurrection, in order to block Bio's full blow, he had also consumed a lot of energy. In terms of results, he was no different from Warband. As for Noah, he had also consumed a lot of his curse power to force the two oldest and most powerful God Slayers into a weakened state. If not for the fact that Noah's curse power was stronger than that of ordinary God Slayers, he would definitely have fallen into a weakened state. In fact, even if he did not fall into a weakened state, Noah had consumed a lot of his power, Luo Hao, his eyes, more or less, exhaustion. With Bio's strength greatly increased to such a degree, the amount of curse power required to drive Bio to attack was naturally unimaginable. However, for Noah to be able to force the two most ancient demon kings to such an extent, even if they didn't join forces and instead fought one after another, Noah should be proud of himself. It's really hard to believe that you've just become a God Slayer not long ago, foreign Rakshasa king. Luo Hao's mouth unknowingly had a trace of dark red blood, but the expression on her pretty face was still as sweet and majestic as ever. How long has it been since Luo Zuelian was forced to this point? Even the so-called invincible King Wulin was injured. Warband looked a little happy. Kid, you did well. As expected of my lifelong rival. Tony licked the corner of his mouth. I really want to exchange swords with you again. Being praised by 3 God Slayer seniors in a row, Noah did not have the slightest bit of happiness. His eyes were tired, but more than that, there was an intimidating expression. Roar! The golden wolf Bio let out a low growl, and his body gradually dissipated, disappearing on the spot. Noah took a step forward, took a deep breath, and said calmly. In that case, can it be considered my victory? It's still early. Luo Hao could not help but glare at Noah. Although it's more or less drained, Luo Zuelian's fists and palms can still block thousands of troops. Hearing this, Noah was not surprised at all. He turned his head to look at Warband and Tony. What about you two? Do you still want to continue fighting? Do you want me to withdraw my claws before they're even stained with my enemy's blood? Warband smiled sinisterly. No. That's not enough to satisfy me. It's rare to have a battle that makes one feel hot all over, Tony said as he carried his sword. To be honest, I haven't had enough yet. Just as Noah had expected, apart from himself, the other three God-slayers had no intention of giving up on this battle. In fact, in the beginning, Noah was the same. Whether it was Warband, Luo Hao, or Tony, all of them ran to Noah to satisfy him and asked for the Gorgon stone, on their own, as if they were the only ones in the world. There was no room for negotiation at all, which made Noah quite angry. However, when he thought of how Alice, Erica, and Liliana had barged into the battlefield to stop this battle and handed him the key to victory, Noah had already calmed down. Now, Noah only had one thought. End this battle quickly. Indeed. Noah slowly closed his eyes, and then suddenly opened them, a sharp light flashing in them. Then, I don't need to hold back anymore. The moment he said that, the stone plate in Noah's heart turned and pointed at the image of a warrior holding a bright weapon. Clang! The next moment, an intricate pattern shining with golden light spun out in front of Noah, blooming with dazzling golden light. Let the justice of the world appear with my spell. As the new spell reverberated, a golden sword made of gold with mysterious runes engraved on it emerged from the dazzling golden pattern, bringing with it a burst of dazzling light. This spell is powerful and eloquent, a sword of wisdom that beckons for victory. Noah reached out his hand and grabbed the hilt of the golden sword. Then, he abruptly pulled the golden sword out of the ground. In an instant, the entire dilapidated battlefield was shrouded in a golden light, turning into a golden world. Luo Hao, Warband, and Tony all subconsciously stepped back, narrowed their eyes, and then looked at the scene around them. The sky had turned into a starry sky. The ground had turned into gold. Runes floated around. The space fluctuated with spell power. This was a dreamlike world that resembled a myth. However, such a beautiful world made Luo Hao, Warband, and Tony tremble and feel a chill in their hearts. This was because in such a beautiful world, dazzling golden swords were either stuck in the ground or floating in the air, and some were even hanging in the starry sky. There were at least tens of millions of them. Moreover, the tips of those golden swords were all pointed at Luo Hao, Warband, and Tony. What's this? Luo Hao, Warband, and Tony were shocked. Although it was only for an instant, Luo Hao, Warband, and Tony all felt a sense of danger. This was no joke. The Godslayer's intuition in battle was very sharp. Even if it wasn't as exaggerated as Noah's, it was still closer to a beast. Instinctively feeling danger was definitely not an illusory thing. Noah, who was holding the most dazzling golden sword in this world, pointed the sword at Luo Hao, Warband, and Tony, and said indifferently, "Sorry, I'm sorry. Although I have the resolve to accompany you to the end, to be honest, no matter how many rounds there are, I don't think I'll lose to any of you in a one-on-one duel. But there's no other way now." Noah's lips slowly curled up. "I've been entrusted with the request to keep you guys in line because something terrible has happened. Since I've already done so much, if I don't make you guys behave, I'm not a man. So, let me make all three of you leave at once." Luo Hao, Warband, and Tony, who were still trembling in fear, were infuriated. "If you can do it, then give it a try." Almost at the same time, the three God-slayers said the same sentence and suddenly jumped up and rushed in the direction of Noah at the same time. Chapter 520. Whoosh! In a world where the sky was the starry sky, the earth was gold, and mysterious runes were floating around, and the space was fluctuating with vast power of spells, Luo Hao, Warband, and Tony flew out like streamers, leaving three different trajectories in the air as they rushed toward Noah. Looking at the three God-slayers, Noah fearlessly raised the golden sword in his hand. The tip of the sword was aimed at Luohao. Luohao, your Vajra vigor technique, is the authority that you usurped from the god known as King Ren, the secret Vajra vigor and King Luo Yenjian. When Noah weaved the knowledge in his mind into the most direct spiritual language and chanted it, waves of spell power reverberated from all directions. Hum, 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 hum. The golden swords that had been inserted into the ground suddenly trembled and soared into the sky. They suddenly turned and formed a wall of swords in front of Noah, with the tips of the swords pointing forward. To be more precise, they were aimed at Luohao. King Ren and Xian were originally a pair. Although they were two people, they appeared as the same divinity. In your country, they were also known as the Heng and He generals. In Buddhism, the two of them were guardian gods who existed specifically to protect the Dharma. That was why they were given the title of King Ren. They guarded the left and right sides of the Buddhist temple and were regarded as door gods. They were Vajra warriors who could unleash extraordinary strength. Under the influence of Noah's spiritual language, the golden swords that were aimed at Luohao rose and fell, creating a sharp sound as they pierced through the air. They flashed out and shot toward Luohao. After usurping this authority, you obtained that transcendent power. You obtained unparalleled monstrous strength, and you can even summon the appearance of the King of Ren. Because they originally existed to protect the divinity, they would naturally appear to protect the master. As Luohao's pupils shrank, the golden swords that shone with a strong light swept out and enveloped Luohao's body. And your dragon roar and tiger roar technique is the power that you seized by defeating the Hindu goddess Gayatri. She has 5 faces and 10 arms, and she is worshipped as the goddess of hymns. She is the goddess of words and language, and she is also the protector of literature, art, and science. But most importantly, this goddess is also in charge of music and art. She can manipulate the spirit of sound, and she is the goddess who offers hymns to the gods. The golden sword screen that enveloped Luohao suddenly blossomed with dazzling light. After defeating the goddess of hymns, you obtain the dragon roar and tiger roar. By chanting hymns, you can set off a huge shockwave. This is the origin of your authority. As soon as his voice fell, the golden sword curtain that enveloped Luohao turned into a ball of light amidst the vibrations in the air, and then it exploded. Bang! Amidst the magnificent loud noise, a burst of thick smoke and golden light shook the air. Inside, Luohao's entire body was smoking as he fell. He smashed onto the ground and let out a painful groan. Wadash! This scene made Tony stop in his tracks with a shocked expression. Kid! Warban, who had transformed into a giant wolf, tightened his limbs and glared at Noah. What did you do? It's not just Luohao's authority. Warban, I also know the origin of your authority. Hearing Warban's question, Noah just smiled and pointed the golden sword in his hand at Warban. Your pack of greedy wolves was stolen from Apollo, who had many names and the divinity of rat, wolf, silver, and gold. The new words made all the golden swords floating in the air come to life. With a spin, they pointed at Warban. Apollo was born from the goddess of earth. At first, Apollo was a god born from the earth. He was originally the child of the goddess of the earth. When he was first born, he was a rat. Later, he became a wolf, and then he became a god in the form of a child. Therefore, Apollo had a close relationship with the earth and also had a close relationship with the wolf. It wasn't until the Apollonian religion succeeded and worshipped Apollo as the sun god that Apollo became the incarnation of light. At the same time, he had the contradictory nature of light and darkness. You, who killed Apollo, seized the part of the wolf from his body. This is the origin of the wolf pack. The golden swords that were aimed at Warban also shot out explosively, flashing through the air and enveloping Warban. Warban's expression changed, and he hurriedly raised his huge wolf claws to block in front of him. However, the golden sword rain still enveloped Warban's huge body. Poochie! Poochie! Instantly, the sound of tearing was heard. Woo! 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 Warban, who was enveloped by the golden swords, let out a sorrowful cry. His huge wolf body was covered in wounds, and his body was covered in wounds. Among the gods of ancient Egypt, there was a god named Osiris. He was the husband of the goddess of earth, Isis, who was good at magic. He was the god of food, a close relative of the pure earth and the goddess of the underworld. Noah ignored Warban's screams and continued to chant the words to activate the golden swords. As the spouse of the Mother Earth, who controls the chain of life in the myths, Osiris was once cut into 14 pieces in the myths, but his wife repaired his torn body and allowed him to regain his life. He descended to the underworld and became a god who was resurrected from the dead. He also became the ruler of the underworld. Your servant of the dead's cage was usurped from him. It can turn those who died in your hands in the past into the living dead, subject to your control. As for your stormy storm, you stole it from the god of wind and rain, who was popular in the civilizations of East Asia and Southeast Asia with China as the center. They were gods from China or North Korea named Wind Master, Rain Master, and Thunder God. After killing them, you naturally obtained the power to control storms and become the embodiment of violence. As Noah's words echoed in the air, the golden swords that were mercilessly cutting into Warban's body dissipated, revealing Warban, who was lying on the ground and had reverted to his old man form, covered in blood. Is that a sword that can cut through a godhead? Tony's forehead was already covered in cold sweat. He looked at Noah with a forced smile. You've been hiding such a trump card. Tony, I know the origin of your authority. The most representative one is your torn silver hand, right? Noah slowly raised his hand. The Celtic god King Nuada was a famous military god. However, when he led his men to attack Ireland, he was injured in a battle with the local gods. As a result, he lost his right arm. The god of medicine created a silver arm for him who only had one arm. You have usurped this power from this god king, allowing him to cut off all things in the world. The golden swords that were hanging in the air spun and fell from the sky with a piercing sound, arriving in front of Noah. As for the Steel Guardian, it is the authority that can give you the toughest body. You stole it from Siegfried. That famous dragon-slaying hero's body was once bathed in dragon's blood, turning him into an immortal body. That's why you can make your body as hard as steel. The golden swords that arrived in front of Noah suddenly shot out like a rain of swords, attacking Tony with ear-piercing screeches. Seeing this, Tony's expression tensed up. He quickly raised his sword and was about to use his trump card when Noah's merciless voice sounded. Then, you have another authority that can strengthen or activate all the mystical powers and make them go berserk. That is what you stole from Dionysus. He was the god of wine that the Thracians worshipped in ancient Greece. He had the power to intoxicate people with wine. That is how your authority came to be. When the words that seemed to announce the end of the battle resounded throughout the world of gold, Tony's body was already covered by a curtain of golden swords. I am the strongest, and I hold all victory in my hands. Be it human or demon, I am the one who defeats all enemies. I will defeat any enemy that stands in my way. The holy words of the undefeated God of victory reverberated in the air, causing the entire world of gold to flash with a blinding light that could burn people's eyes, illuminating every corner of the world. This light did not dissipate for a long time. Chapter 521. Phew! Feeling that more than half of the curse power in his body had been depleted, Noah could not help but feel tired and let out a heavy sigh. His body that had been tense from the battle began to relax. The excitement in his heart also gradually subsided. Since the God-slayer was a natural warrior born to fight, his body and mind would enter the best combat state when faced with a situation that required him to fight, allowing him to display 100% of his strength perfectly. Then when the Godslayer's body relaxed, it was easy to imagine what it meant. The battle was over. There was no doubt about that. In fact, if the battle was not over, then Noah really did not know if he could continue to fight. After all, the warrior avatar could only deal with one target under normal circumstances. In order to seal Luo Hao, Warban, and Tony, which added up to more than 8 authorities, Noah had activated the warrior avatar more than 8 times. That consumption was even more severe than using Bio, who had great power. Although it was not to the extent of being depleted, Noah's curse power had been depleted to less than 1/10 of its original level after dealing with Warban and Luo Hao in succession, as well as Warban, Luo Hao, and Tony in one fell swoop. Of course, although the consumption was large, the results were also gratifying. Suppressing the tiredness and fatigue in his heart, Noah raised his head and looked around. Luo Hao, Warban, and Tony were lying in different positions on the ground. One was smoking all over, one was covered in wounds, and one did not seem to have any obvious injuries, but he was also lying on the ground. His breath was so weak that it made one wonder if he would die at any time. The golden sword used by the warrior avatar could cut through the quintessence of the god of disobedience and seal the authority of the Godslayer. Even if the target was not the god of disobedience and the Godslayer, it could still seal the opponent's ability. In addition, the golden sword could also cause substantial damage. Of course, that was when the golden sword directly hit the target. Luo Hao, Warban, and Tony were unfortunately cut by the golden sword curtain, so it was natural that they would end up like this. However, things were not over yet. Noah forced himself to focus and turned his gaze to the corner of the battlefield. His eyes gradually turned cold. What? Are you going to hide there again? The entire place fell silent. After a while, a petite figure appeared there without any warning. You've really surprised me. A childish and cold voice came out of her little mouth. As far as I know, each of the 3 Godslayers, who were your opponents, had the power to match me when I was the Queen of the Holy Trinity. Since you were able to defeat all 3 of them, it really exceeded my expectations. Is that so? Noah sneered. Even the famous goddess of wisdom, Athena, has unexpected things. That proves that your power has far exceeded the scope of what this concubine's wisdom can determine. Athena's dark snake eyes stared at Noah. After a while, a smile appeared on her emotionless face. It seems that the witch, Pandora, has indeed obtained a child that is the most special even among our enemies. You didn't come here just to flatter me, right? Noah glanced at Athena. Although things have more or less exceeded your expectations, in order to defeat Luo Hao, Warban, and Tony, I have indeed weakened a lot. If you attack me now, you might be able to take back your snake. Don't tell me you don't have this thought at all. Indeed, looking at the current situation, this is the wisest choice, Athena calmly replied. However, the part of me that belongs to the goddess of wisdom is warning me that if I attack you, I won't be able to succeed even now, and my life might even be in danger. Therefore, I think that you should have prepared a sword to deal with me, right? Hearing Athena's words, Noah slowly narrowed his eyes. This Athena, she actually guessed this. However, Noah did have a sword that could deal with Athena. Although he had consumed a lot of energy, Noah could still use the warrior avatar again. If Athena chose to attack him here, then she would definitely not be able to return alive. Knowing this, Athena didn't seem to have the intention to attack anymore. She shifted her gaze to Noah and curled her lips. If that's the case, Noah Dole, I'll leave my snake with you for the time being. Hearing this, Noah was stunned. What does this mean? Athena is going to give up the Gorgon stone. Impossible, right? When I appeared on the ground this time, I thought that searching for the snake was my mission, but now it seems that the real connection between me and the snake is not my snake, but you who obtained the snake." Athena looked up and said word by word, "My intuition is telling me that the connection between you and me seems to be far more than what it is now. Perhaps, from the moment I appeared, my fate was inseparable from yours. Meeting you in the birthplace of magic is also a kind of fate. Only this point, even as the goddess of wisdom and the former queen of the divine realm, I still can't control. So, I'll leave my snake with you for the time being." Athena turned around. "We will meet again, Noah Doria." After leaving this sentence, Athena stepped into the distance and leaped hundreds of meters away in an instant. Immediately after, she took another step and disappeared from Noah's sight. Only then did Noah's heart relax, and he tilted his body slightly in exhaustion. However, just as Noah's body tilted down, two figures suddenly appeared beside Noah, supporting Noah and supporting Noah. Sure enough, no matter how powerful you are, you can't be as free and easy as before after dealing with three kings of the same rank at once, right? Erica, who was holding Noah's left hand, smiled sweetly. However, ordinary kings can't do such a thing. To be able to achieve such an amazing record, you are indeed worthy of being the king we follow. It's been hard on you. Liliana also spoke softly, which was rare for her. Please have a good rest. In the end, we still have to deal with the aftermath. Alice, who had appeared here at some point, looked around and sighed. Italy has to bear a huge loss again. This was immediately obvious if one took a look at the surroundings. With Noah, Luohao, Warban, and Doni as the center, the area within a few hundred meters of them had been completely destroyed. There were no buildings to be seen at all, and there was not even a decent ground to be found. Pillars of air and water were still gushing out from the ground, extinguishing the sea of fire that was still burning due to Warban's self-destruction. Such a scene directly reminded one of the crater after a volcanic eruption. Although this was not as exaggerated as the previous crater because Noah defeated Luohao, Warban, and Doni in time, it was still a disaster for humans. It's better than the whole of Italy being destroyed by the four kings, right? Erica revealed a devilish smile. This loss is already considered small. After saying that, Erica fell silent. Even Alice and Liliana fell into silence, causing the atmosphere to become awkward. Looking at the blushing faces of the three girls in front of him, Noah knew that they were thinking about the scene of Professor's magic on him. He smiled helplessly. Compared to that, it's better to think about how to deal with those three troublemakers first. Apart from Doni, Luohao, and Warban were the kind of people who thought highly of themselves. After waking up, if they recalled that the three of them were defeated by Noah even when they joined forces, it would not be strange for them to vent their anger on others. This made the three girls laugh bitterly. Bring them back to the hotel first. Noah also smiled bitterly. As long as I'm here, these people shouldn't cause any trouble. Alice, Erica, and Liliana nodded and helped Noah to the hotel. Chapter 522. On that day, due to the several duels between Noah, Luohao, Warban, and Tony, the incident of the terrain changing was reported in the form of news by the various magic societies in Italy. Of course, the magic societies in Italy were not enough to expose the existence of the magic world to the ordinary people. With the manipulation of the intelligence, the incident was finally published in the form of a report of a large amount of natural coal-bed methane hidden underground was suddenly detonated, making the people of Italy think that it was just an accident. Fortunately, there were no casualties this time as well. After all, after Noah learned that Erica and Liliana had been abducted by Warban, the first thing he did was to ask the people in charge of the Red Bronze Cross and Black Cross branches to disperse the residents there. Naturally, there would not be any casualties. The reason for dispersing the crowd was the same as the last time. that it was detected in advance as an excuse. This time, the incident was once again reported as a pure accident. However, as long as they were related to the magic world, it was impossible for them not to know the real reason for this incident. Thus, it wouldn't be long before Noah first defeated the oldest demon king, then defeated the unparalleled Wuxia king, and finally won against the combined forces of Warban, Luohao, and Tony. News of Noah's incredible battle prowess should spread throughout the entire magic world. After today, Noah would definitely become the most famous and most untouchable person in the entire magic world. However, no matter what kind of uproar the magic world would cause because of this incident, it had nothing to do with Noah. With the help of Alice, Erica, and Liliana, Noah settled the three deicide down. Then, he returned to his original hotel room, sat down on the bed, and closed his eyes. Although the several battles with Warban, Luohao, and Tony did not cause much harm to Noah, Noah had consumed a lot of energy. The physical and mental exhaustion was just one of the reasons. The real consumption was Noah's curse power. Before becoming a deicide, Noah's curse power was already very extraordinary. After becoming a deicide, Noah's curse power was naturally much higher than that of other deicide. But even so, after so many high-level battles, Noah's curse power was almost exhausted. According to the current situation, Noah would have to rest for at least 1 or 2 months if he wanted to recover all his curse power. This was not surprising. If there was anything to blame, it could only be that Noah's curse power was too extraordinary. Once it increased, it would be troublesome to fully recover. At least, that was what Noah thought before returning to the hotel. With his eyes closed, Noah immersed his consciousness in the depths of his mind. He saw the outline of the stone plate with the pattern of the 10 avatars. He saw that on the stone plate with the pattern of the 10 avatars, there was a pattern that was flashing. It was a guild emblem that looked like a fairy's tail. It looked like a fairy flying freely in the air. That was the pattern of the fairy avatar. Fairy, an avatar formed by combining Wellislana's shepherd avatar and Noah's regenerative ability from the protozoan virus. No matter how serious the injury was, as long as it caused damage to the body, it could be expelled in a very short time, allowing the user to recover to their original state. Since ancient times, the existence of shepherds was a symbol of harvest and vitality. Because shepherds were relatively easy to raise. Therefore, from a long time ago, shepherds were regarded as livestock, as food, and as support for human life. Over time, in the era of superstition, shepherds gradually turned into sacred beasts. In addition, in a nomadic society, the size of livestock was directly related to the abundance of food, and even financial resources. It was directly related to the number of people that could be supported. Therefore, shepherds was also a sacred beast that had a deep relationship with royalty. As the guardian of the people and royalty, Wellislana, who had a variety of forms, also had the avatar of shepherds. Using the avatar of shepherds, Wellislana would obtain vitality that others could not match. Even if he died, he could be resurrected. Noah, who absorbed Wellislana's power, also obtained this power, and as a result, the avatar of fairy was born. Originally, the avatar of shepherds already represented an unimaginable terrifying vitality that could resurrect people. And in the world of the Dark Bullet, the protozoa virus also had an extremely foul vitality that could allow people to regenerate in all aspects of the human body. The highest level of regeneration could even allow people to survive even if they were thrown into a high-temperature volcano. Just thinking about it was terrifying. Now, with the fusion of the avatar of shepherds, and the regenerative ability strengthened by the protozoa virus, the vitality and resilience of Noah's fairy avatar could be imagined. Using this avatar, whether or not he could resurrect Noah was still unknown. After all, Noah was not at the point where he needed to die. However, in a situation where his body was extremely weak and his curse power was depleted, before Noah returned to the hotel, he had already discovered that the pattern of the fairy avatar had been flashing. This made Noah puzzled, and he faintly had some guesses. Let's give it a try. After making up his mind, Noah chanted the spirit of words. Noble and smart, elegant and beautiful, I praise your life. Here you are integrated with nature, accompanied by the chanting of the fairy that was like a mumble, but also like a soundless dream. Noah's body began to fluctuate with a burst of brilliant starlight, as if he was wearing a coat made of the stars in the sky. His whole body exuded an extraordinary aura. Under the shroud of the starlight, Noah's appearance did not seem to change, but the changes inside were huge. First of all, the extreme fatigue that had been shrouding Noah's heart began to slowly dissipate. Secondly, Noah's greatly depleted curse power began to become active, as if an invisible curse power lake was suddenly connected to his body, allowing Noah's curse power to rapidly recover. Aware of this change, Noah's spirit was lifted, and he was surprised. The avatar of fairy can also recover fatigue and curse power? Noah had always thought that the avatar of fairy could only heal injuries. As a result, the avatar of fairy suddenly gave Noah such a big surprise. According to the current recovery situation, it would only take about half an hour for Noah's fatigue to be completely eliminated. Even the curse power that would have taken 1 or 2 months to fully recover could be restored to its peak state in 2 or 3 hours. This was the terrifying recovery ability of the avatar of fairy. It seemed that the recovery ability of the avatar of fairy was not only for the body, but also for Noah's various injuries. Even the spirit and curse power can be restored. This avatar can't really bring me back from the dead, right? Noah suddenly had a strong impulse to try and see, but after a second, he realized the foolishness of this idea. Could it be that I can die once and see if I can be resurrected? Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but more than that, he was pleasantly surprised by the avatar of fairy and muttered to himself. Perhaps the other avatars have other effects that I haven't discovered yet. It had been less than a month since he obtained the authority of 10 avatars, and this powerful force naturally had many areas that could be exploited. Unfortunately, it's useless for the God Slayer to train honestly. The God Slayer can only become stronger in battle. Noah shook his head helplessly. It's better to wait until I've fully recovered to find Erica and Liliana and personally memorize the origins of Luo Hao, Warban, and Tony's authority so that I can mobilize the warriors to deal with them. Using the magic of Professor could allow one to obtain an extremely large amount of knowledge in an instant. However, that knowledge could only be maintained for about a day or so. That was to be expected. If the effects of magic could be maintained forever, then there would be no need for magicians or even humans to continue learning. Let's hope those 3 guys wake up later. Leaving such a sentence, Noah closed his eyes and immersed himself in the recovery of fairy. Chapter 523. Here's everything. In Noah's room, Erica and Liliana piled several thick books on the glass table in front of the sofa. Bishop Luo Hao, Marquis Warban, and Sarbat Riken have usurped the authority from every god, and the content of the myths are all here, Liliana said to Noah, who was sitting on the sofa. Marquis Warban's wolf pack of greedy wolves came from Apollo, servant of death, came from Osiris, Storm came from Fungbua, rain master and thunder god. Even the pupil of Sodom came from the one-eyed Roman god of war, Horatio Cocleus. It's quite detailed. Archbishop Luo Hao's Vidra divine art came from King Luo Yen, and the secret Vidra warrior came from Gayatri. The dragon roar and tiger roar came from Gayatri. These 2 divinities are also recorded here, Erica added. Also, the origin of Sarbatri's lacerating silver hand, the origin of Nuada, the origin of Siegfried's protection of steel, and the origin of the authority that can make all mystical powers go berserk. The records of Dionysus, the god of wine in ancient Greek mythology, are also here. Hearing this, Noah directly picked up a rather old and heavy book that was closest to him and casually flipped through it. Thanks. With these, my warrior avatar can be fully utilized. It should be much easier to deal with Luo Hao, Warban, and Tony. They won't be able to act rashly anymore. As mentioned earlier, the knowledge obtained from the professor's magic could only be stored in the mind for about a day. That was to say, the large amount of divine knowledge that Noah obtained from Erica, and Liliana yesterday was all gone. He could no longer use that knowledge to activate the warrior avatar. Originally, Noah was still thinking that with his special physique, if he could completely absorb the power that entered his body, he wondered if he could also absorb the knowledge brought by the professor's magic. In the end, Noah did not know if it was because what entered his body was not power but knowledge. He still remembered the knowledge of the gods clearly yesterday, but when he woke up early this morning, he could not remember all of it. Although it was a little regretful, Noah, who was already mentally prepared, was not disappointed. He then went to ask Erica and Liliana about the divine knowledge yesterday. Erica and Liliana immediately said that it was too troublesome to teach by word of mouth, so they simply asked the people in charge of the Copper Black Cross and Bronze Black Cross branches to send the books that recorded the divine knowledge for Noah to read by himself. As long as the contents of these books were all memorized, Noah could at any time forge a sword that could be used to deal with Warban's wolf pack, servant of death, stormy storm, and eye of Sodom, as well as authority that could be used to deal with Luo Hao's Vidra vigor, and dragon and tiger roar, Tony's lacerating silver hand, steel shield, and berserk divine wine, that was later named by the Sage Council. The sword of gold was also the sword of wisdom. This was something that Noah understood very well, and he also understood how unfair it was to be able to use the sword of gold as a warrior. Whether the opponent was the god of disobedience, or the god slayer, or even someone other than the god slayer, and the god slayer, as long as he had sufficient knowledge about the opponent's power, he could seal that part of the power. That was to say, as long as he had sufficient knowledge, the sword of gold, which could even cut through the divinity, was simply a nightmarish weapon for the enemy. Moreover, unlike the Black Tea King, the sword of gold did not need to be in contact with the opponent to be activated, but it also had restrictions that required sufficient knowledge. To use the Black Tea King, one would need to be in contact with the opponent, and once in contact, one would be able to plunder one of the opponent's abilities. To use the warrior, one would need to have sufficient knowledge. If one was prepared, one would only be able to seal the opponent's power, but there was no limit to the amount of power that could be sealed. As long as one had sufficient knowledge and the power of the incarnation, one could seal as many times as one wanted. Compared to the former, the latter was more useful for Noah. After all, Noah's power of curse was even more unfair than the average god slayer. He could use the incarnation of the warrior many times, and Noah's memory and comprehension were strong enough to learn a language in a short time. It would be much easier for him to learn any knowledge he wanted. The warrior incarnation was indeed very suitable for Noah. As for the Black Tea King, being able to plunder one of the opponent's abilities was indeed very powerful, but there was only one ability to plunder. The prerequisite of being in contact with the opponent was too uncertain, so it was a good choice to integrate it into the warrior incarnation. Of course, both the warrior and the Black Tea King had their own advantages and disadvantages, but the warrior was more suitable for Noah and had more practical use. It's just that, even if you're prepared to deal with Bishop Luo Hao, Marquis Oban, and Sarbatrees in advance, you might not be able to defeat the three kings again, right? Erica said to Noah. Putting everything else aside, Hierarch Luo Hao is a king of the same generation as Marquis Oban. It's impossible for him to only have two powers, the Vidra Vigor Art, and the Dragon's Roar and the Tiger's Roar. There's no need to even mention Marquis Oban. That king's powers are not fully understood by the Sage Council. Apart from the most commonly used and confirmed wolf pack of voracious wolves, servant of death, stormy storm, and eye of Sodom, there must be other powers that have yet to be revealed. Then is it the same for Sarbitrice? Liliana tilted her head. That king has a total of 4 powers. At present, 3 of them have already been exposed, but the last power is still in hiding. Although you yourself say that power is completely useless in battle, but it may have other uses. Even so, whether it's Oban, Luo Hao, or Tony, the authorities that they use and are most familiar with are the ones that we know of so far. Preparing the swords that seal these authorities will be very advantageous in battle, Noah said without raising his head as he flipped through the book. I'm confident that I can defeat them even when they're at their peak. If they're in a state where a large number of authorities are sealed, just like yesterday, even if the 3 of them come at me together, they won't be my match. Indeed, the battle yesterday had proven this point. However, Erica and Liliana shook their heads at the same time. My king, you've just reincarnated as a godslayer, and your thinking is still at the level of a normal person. If you use those words to evaluate the godslayers, it'll be very troublesome, Erica said bluntly. The so-called godslayers are all existences that have killed gods when they were still ordinary people. At that time, needless to say, they were definitely much weaker than gods, but in the end, they still succeeded. Although luck played a large part in the godslayers' success in killing gods in the beginning, if they weren't born warriors, even if they were lucky, their legs would start to tremble when facing gods, let alone brandishing their swords at them, Liliana said solemnly. Even if most of the powers of the kings are sealed, as long as there's a trace of power left, the king can still fight. And once a trace of opportunity appears, the kings of the godslayers will be able to seize it and win. Erica continued Liliana's words and looked straight at Noah with her beautiful eyes. It's the same for gods, and it's also the same for you, the king of the same rank. Noah's hand that was flipping through the book paused. Erica and Liliana were right. Whether it was Luo Hao, Warban, or Tony, they were all existences that had killed gods. How could they be defeated so easily just because most of their powers were sealed? The godslayers couldn't be judged by human common sense. The godslayer's nature was more like that of wild beasts. Even the weakest of wild beasts still had fangs that could bite off a human's neck and claws that could tear a human's body apart. Therefore, one couldn't let one's guard down just because they could seal most of the godslayer's powers and think that they were easy to deal with. If one did, one would definitely die a horrible death. At this moment, Erica suddenly changed the topic. Speaking of authorities, my king, I have a question. Chapter 524. Question. Noah, who was secretly warning himself not to underestimate Luo Hao, Warban, and Tony because of yesterday's victory, was startled. He closed the book in his hand and looked at Erica. What question? Liliana also looked at Erica in confusion, as if she didn't know what Erica's question was. Under such circumstances, Erica pondered for a moment and spoke. Yesterday, you did use the golden sword that was specially designed to deal with the god of disobedience and the godslayer. It's a sword that can cut through godheads. The sword of the undefeated god of victory, Welslana, is quite famous. Noah nodded and didn't correct Erica's words. After fusing the knight's sword and the revolver, the golden sword that the warrior could use in his avatar was no longer limited to dealing with the god of disobedience and the godslayer. Even if it was still able to sever the godhead, the sword of wisdom would be able to sever everything it knew even if it was another opponent's ability. It was always successful. Noah didn't need to specifically explain this point. He only needed to know it himself. However, Erica raised a question about the sword of wisdom. Could it be that Erica had discovered this? But since becoming a godslayer, Noah had only used the golden sword once, and that was when he dealt with Luo Hao, Warban, and Tony yesterday. Yesterday, Noah had only used the golden sword to seal Luo Hao, Warban, and Doni's authority as Godslayers. He did not seal the rest of their powers. How, then, did Erica find out? To Noah's surprise, Erica's next question was not only about the golden sword that the warrior avatar could use, but also about the authority of Noah's 10 avatars. When Liliana used her spirit vision to see you use the golden sword to defeat the 3 kings, I didn't think of this because the situation was urgent. But now that I think about it, it's really strange, isn't it? Erica asked suspiciously. The 10 clones stolen from Wells Lana should have very strict usage limits and usage limits. Even if it's the golden sword, it should only be used once in a certain period of time. Using it to seal an authority is already the limit. Erica looked straight into Noah's dark and deep eyes as if she wanted to see through all his thoughts. She put on a gorgeous smile that was full of aggression like a lioness's. Then, why were you able to seal no less than 8 authorities from the 3 kings at once? Could it be that you used the golden sword 8 times without limit? Noah immediately looked at Erica, secretly surprised. Erica, you've noticed that too. In that case, it's really strange. Liliana also came to a realization. That golden sword that can cut through the Godhead needs to be forged with knowledge, so it is also called the Sword of Wisdom, also known as the Sword of Spirit of Speech. As long as you have the knowledge of one Godhead, then you can forge a sword to deal with that Godhead. If you want to deal with another Godhead, then you need to reforge a sword, which is equivalent to weaving wisdom and spirit of speech. But the avatar can only be used once in a certain period of time. Once it's cancelled, it can't be used again, so you can continue to forge a new sword, right? Liliana looked at Noah with a puzzled look. But the king can weave a spirit of speech to deal with 8 godheads and prepare 8 swords. That doesn't seem to meet this restriction. Unless... The smile on Erica's face became more and more threatening. Your warrior avatar doesn't have a limit on the number of times it can be used. It's even possible that the other avatars don't have a limit on the number of times it can be used. Maybe there are even conditions for using it, right? The entire place fell silent. Liliana widened her eyes and looked at Noah in surprise. Erica, on the other hand, looked like she was going to force a criminal suspect into a corner so that the other party could only confess. Her face was full of provocation. In response to this, Noah smiled indifferently, and his expression turned into a smile that was not a smile. What's the matter? Are you curious about my authority? Or rather, we're curious about your power. Erica's eyes rippled with a strange light. It's not just the power from Wellislana's 10 avatars. Yesterday, when you dealt with Bishop Luo Hao and Marquis Warban, you also summoned a golden wolf. The power of that wolf has exceeded the category of a divine beast. Moreover, Welslana and Mekl are gods that have nothing to do with wolves. Why do you have the power to command such a wolf? Also, there seems to be something strange about the battles you fought yesterday. Erica opened Liliana's mind. As she recalled yesterday's battle, the more she thought about it, the more she felt that something was wrong. Come to think of it, you also seem to show signs of repeatedly using your avatars. All of this points to a problem, Erica concluded. The power of your 10 avatars that you usurped from Welslana doesn't seem to have strict usage conditions and time restrictions. Each of them is obviously stronger than an avatar should be. Those are no longer the so-called 10 avatars, but more like 10 individual powers. The origin of that wolf is unknown, and Mekl's power is also strange. Liliana's brows furrowed deeper and deeper, and then she glared at Noah. You're still hiding something from us, right? At this point, it's useless even if you deny it, Erica said calmly. At this time, I advise you to be honest. Listening to Erica's analysis and Liliana's questions, and looking at the 2 girls in front of him, one was looking at him with an aggressive smile, while the other was staring at him fearlessly. Noah smiled, and it was a very strange smile. It seems that yesterday's professor has changed your impression of me. Ha! Both Erica and Liliana were stunned. Didn't you notice? Noah said, amused. Your interrogation just now was different from before. It's not the attitude you should have toward a king. Also, the honorifics have disappeared without you noticing. Only then did Erica and Liliana come to their senses and realize their own problems. Immediately, their faces reddened. You? No, what are you talking about? Erica took a step back. Her aggressiveness was completely gone, replaced by embarrassment and a fake smile as if she was trying to cover up her loss of composure. It's useless to try to shake me, Erica Brantery, with these words. No, 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 no. It's my fault for not using honorifics. You can punish me however you want, Your Majesty. Liliana even summoned her Grandmaster Silversmith and aimed it at Noah's neck with tears in her eyes. But he said something about you, that his feelings for you have changed. That's definitely not true. Am I right? Am I right? Are you asking or interrogating me? It looks like a threat, doesn't it? Noah raised his hand with a wry smile and surrendered. Okay, it's my fault. Anyway, how about you move the sword away first? Liliana didn't seem to realize what she had done until now. She quickly put away the sword, got down on one knee, and said sorrowfully. How dare you point your sword at the king? You're not qualified to be a knight. Please punish me, Your Majesty. Okay, I'm just joking with you, Noah said helplessly. I already have a fiancé, and you're God's favored children. You can't be my concubines, right? Fiancé. Erica and Liliana froze. Then, a strange emotion welled up in their hearts. At this moment, Erica's and Liliana's mobile phones both rang, waking the two girls up with a start. They took their mobile phones out and went to the side to have a conversation. Looking at this scene, Noah stopped joking and frowned. After a while, Erica and Liliana hung up the phone and their expressions became serious again. Seeing this, Noah's frown deepened. What happened? Erica and Liliana looked at each other, nodded, and answered in unison. Sect leader Luo Hao, Marquis Warban, and Salbart have all woken up. Hearing this, Noah looked at the book in his hand. They really woke up at the wrong time. Chapter 525. In a luxurious hall on the top floor of the hotel that was comparable to a conference room, a strange, heavy, and tense atmosphere filled the air. Noah, who came in with Erica and Liliana, could tell where the strange, heavy, and tense atmosphere came from at a glance. In the center of the hall, at a round table that looked like a conference table, Luo Hao, Warban, and Tony were facing each other at the farthest distance. Although it was called a confrontation, it was actually just Luo Hao and Warban looking at each other. Luo Hao looked at each other with a haughty look like a tyrant looking down on the world, while Warban smiled unhurriedly. His evil eyes flashed with an evil glint, making the atmosphere extremely heavy and tense. As for the strange atmosphere, it came from the third person present. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. The table in front of Tony was full of dishes, and Tony was eating and drinking as if there was no one around him. It was as if he didn't notice the tense atmosphere at all. His attitude made the heavy and tense atmosphere around him strange. The first person to notice Noah's arrival was Tony. Yo! Noah! Just like before, Tony greeted him in the same way as before. Oh, you're here too. I thought you weren't here. Upon hearing Tony's words, Luo Hao and Warban finally looked away from each other and turned to Noah. As soon as he saw Noah, Warban's aged face curled into a sinister smile like a lone wolf eyeing its prey. Luo Hao, on the other hand, knitted her beautiful brows when she saw Erica and Liliana standing behind Noah. Who are you? Erica and Liliana knelt on one knee at the same time, almost as if it was a conditioned reflex. I've heard a lot about you, sect leader Luo Hao. Although Erica lowered her head, her voice was neither servile nor overbearing. I'm Erica Brantley, the Grand Knight of the Italian Magic Association Red Bronze Black Cross. I'm here to pay my respects to the Eastern Martial Arts King. Liliana Kranikar also sends her greetings to you, Sect Master. Liliana lowered her head and said, I am the Great Knight of the Bronze Black Cross. I am currently following His Excellency Noah as a follower. I'm not asking about your identities. Luo Hao's frown deepened. Girls, you have to be clear about your own weight. I, Luo Hao, am an unparalleled supreme martial artist. From the very beginning, I had no intention of placing you in my sights. What I'm asking is why you're here. Luo Hao's gaze toward Erica and Liliana turned unpleasant. Don't you know that as long as you see my figure, you will be punished? After being reminded by Luo Hao, Noah, Erica, and Liliana finally remembered. The Wuxia king from the east had a vicious reputation for gouging out the eyes of those who saw his face and destroying the ears of those who heard his voice. From this point of view, Luo Hao was undoubtedly more terrifying and dangerous than Woban. After all, although Woban was capricious, he could still hold a conversation with others to a certain extent. However, Luo Hao wasn't like that. The Wuxia king didn't put anyone in his eyes at all. To be more precise, he didn't have the habit of putting anyone in his eyes. Even a child prodigy who was promoted to a great knight before reaching adulthood was no different from an ordinary person in Luo Hao's eyes. Therefore, Luo Hao's reprimand wasn't angry. Instead, he was disinterested. A person of my status can't talk to the people directly. Do you understand? Luo Hao said coldly. Those who look directly at my body will have their eyes gouged out, and those who hear my voice will have their ears cut off. Girls, I don't have any followers around me to carry out the punishment, so you'd better carry out the punishment yourselves. Luo Hao stated this dangerous sentence in the most natural tone, as if he was talking about the existence of gravity on Earth. He didn't realize how ridiculous it was at all. Obviously, Luo Hao didn't have a correct outlook on life. Moreover, he didn't have a correct outlook on life. Noah had no doubt that once Erica and Liliana begged for mercy, Luo Hao would be so impatient that she would directly use Dragon Roar and Tiger Roar to crush Erica and Liliana into minced meat with the blast wave, wouldn't she? This made Erica and Liliana's expressions change. Sect Master Luo Hao, Noah said indifferently. Although I don't doubt that you're the leader of the martial arts circle of China and your status is higher than the average emperor, Erica and Liliana are my followers. As the king of China, you don't seem to have the right to punish my followers, do you? Your followers. Luo Hao was stunned and finally turned his gaze to Erica and Liliana. Are you his followers? Hearing this, Erica and Liliana finally understood that they had never entered the heart of this beautiful girl before them, let alone have a high or low status. Just as Luo Hao said, she didn't care about Erica and Liliana at all. Otherwise, Luo Hao should have known that Liliana had just introduced herself as Noah's follower. Of course, it wasn't that Luo Hao didn't hear Liliana's words, but she didn't care about the content of Liliana's words in the first place. That was why such a funny scene happened. Since you're the followers of the king who shares the same rank as me, I really don't have the right to punish you. Luo Hao loosened her furrowed brows. The two countries are at war. Even the emperor has no right to punish the envoys of the king of a foreign country. Girls, apart from the king who shares the same rank as me, there are definitely no more than 5 people who can see my face. You should rejoice. Yes. Sect Master Luo Hao. Erica and Liliana secretly heaved a sigh of relief. They remained kneeling on one knee, lowered their heads, and stopped talking. Warban, who had been watching the show from the side, sneered. It seems like the people I like aren't even qualified to enter the eyes of the Wuxia king of China. It's great that we have different interests. That was right. Warban liked people like Erica and Liliana who wouldn't be obsequious to him. To Warban, nothing was more boring than obedience. Therefore, people like Erica and Liliana who would bare their fangs at him from time to time and were neither servile nor overbearing were the perfect targets for Warban. It had nothing to do with strength, but whether or not they could relieve Warban's boredom. On the contrary, Luo Hao looked down on everyone in the world and was only interested in the king who shares the same rank as her. Should it be said that this pair of enemies really formed a sharp contrast in all aspects? Be it Luo Hao or Warban, both of them had lost their personalities and didn't have the values of a normal person. It was no wonder that people thought they were the fiercest demon kings. However, that kind of thing doesn't matter. I'm just staying here to tell you. Warban stared at Noah and clicked his tongue. Kid, I admit that I lost this time, but the next time we meet, Warban, will bite your neck off with my own mouth. Remember that. After saying that, Warban stood up and turned around. A whirlwind suddenly swept up his body, and he disappeared. Devil King of a foreign country, you've also defeated me, Luo Hao. Therefore, I won't allow you to lose to anyone other than me, so as to avoid tarnishing Luo Zualian's reputation. Luo Hao said without any explanation. Luo Zualian will return to her hometown, to the mountains where she lives in seclusion, and practice martial arts diligently again. The next time we meet, we'll definitely have a showdown. After saying that, Luo Hao also stood up and took a deep look at Noah. It was as if she wanted to remember Noah's appearance. With a flash, she disappeared on the spot along with a wave of flower petals. Seeing that Luo Hao and Warban had left without causing any trouble, Noah heaved a sigh of relief. Originally, Noah was prepared to fight again. It was best that he didn't have to do anything. Oh, you've been targeted by a group of people. Tony was the only one left at the scene, eating and drinking to his heart's content as he spoke with a chuckle. As expected of my close friend and strong enemy. However, don't forget that you still have me as your opponent. You have to be vigilant. You'd better go somewhere cool. Noah couldn't help but curse. You walking trouble, don't let me see you again. Hey, don't be so cold. Scram. Chapter 526. Speaking of which, Noah has not had a moment of peace since he came to this world. Less than an hour after he arrived in this world, he met one of the only 6 gods in this world, and now there are 7. He even fought with the other party. He was abducted by the troublemaker, the god slayer, and was half forced to make the decision to kill the god. It was a life and death battle with the 2 highest level gods. After being reincarnated as a god slayer, he was found by the god slayer, who was known as a troublemaker, and they fought again. He also met the Trinity Athena who was looking for the snake, and after some twists and turns, he found the Gorgon stone. Then, 2 of the most ancient and ferocious demon kings that Athena had lured over came looking for me. Not only did I fight them once, but I also killed 3 demon kings of the same rank. I was targeted by this group of people. It had only been less than a month since Noah came to this world, but he had already encountered things that others might not have in their entire lives. He was involved in one battle after another. Fortunately, in the end, Athena seemed to no longer intend to take the Gorgon stone from Noah's hands, and after making the decision to temporarily leave the Gorgon stone with Noah, she disappeared. Originally, by right, the whole thing should have come to an end, and Noah would also have the long-awaited peace. However, in the following days, Noah realized how naive his idea was. He didn't know if Noah was destined to not be too peaceful in this world, or if the people who killed gods were destined to not be peaceful. After Luohao, Warban, and Tony all left, Noah took Erica and Liliana on a journey that could only be described as legendary. In an unknown rural place, they confronted the evil magic society head-on. In unknown ancient ruins, they were fancied by various mythological beasts. In unknown deep mountains and forests, they were challenged by inexplicable powerhouses. In all kinds of unknown or well-known places, they were found by all kinds of matters related to God, and fell into the whirlpool of a battle of wits and courage. In the end, Noah, who only wanted to travel while looking for clues about the world fragment, did not really look for the world fragment for even a day. Instead, it was as if he was cursed, and he unknowingly went deep into the center of all kinds of events. In the end, Noah, who originally wanted to deal with it casually, ended up doing all kinds of important things that were definitely worthy of the headlines. For example, he could destroy the evil magic society along with their headquarters. For example, they would destroy the mythological beasts that roamed the ancient ruins along with the ruins themselves. For example, they would take down the experts who came to challenge them and destroy the so-called deep mountains and forests. Another example would be when encountering a God-related event, the source of the event would be completely destroyed. As a result, everything that Noah was involved in was completely destroyed. Noah didn't do it on purpose. Of course, it couldn't be said that Noah didn't do it on purpose. It could only be said that when Noah realized it, he realized that because of him, all kinds of things were completely destroyed. Noah didn't want to cause such damage at all. However, the God Slayer was born to be a warrior. Once he got serious, his body would naturally enter the best combat state, allowing him to exert 100% of his strength. Therefore, generally, when Noah got serious, even if he deliberately restrained himself and held back, it would still lead to the destruction of the battlefield in the end. It couldn't be helped. The authority of the 10 incarnations, which was derived from the power of Noah, Welslana, and Mekar, was too powerful. Sometimes, even if he held back, it would still cause great damage. In addition, the God Slayer itself was an existence that could become stronger in battle. Noah had disappeared, and the limitation ability that was integrated into the 10 incarnations could also allow Noah's authority to enter a state of self-enhancement when not in use. Whether Noah was fighting or not, he could make the authority stronger. In this way, the damage caused could only be greater. There was absolutely no possibility of it being smaller. Therefore, generally, when Noah realized it, the surroundings had already been destroyed. Noah lived like this for 3 months. It wasn't until 3 months later that Noah finally grew through all kinds of battles. He finally had full control of the authority of his 10 incarnations. As long as Noah was careful not to overdo it, he could control the power of the authority and not cause unnecessary damage for no reason. The premise was that he didn't encounter an opponent that needed to use too much power to deal with. It's here. In front of a hotel, Liliana took out her mobile phone. After checking a little, she nodded to Noah. "This is the hotel I booked before coming to this city. Let's rest here today." "I can finally stay in a luxurious hotel room," Erica complained. "I don't want to stay in a hotel that doesn't even have a bathtub full of petals when I take a bath." "Do you have to go through so much trouble to take a bath?" Noah sighed. "Sure enough, a young lady is a young lady. Even if I, Erica Brantley, am a young lady, I'm the most gorgeous and honorable kind of young lady," Erica said to Noah matter-of-factly. "I'm not the willful young lady in your impression." "Then why don't you try not complaining when you suffer a little?" Noah rolled his eyes at Erica and then praised Liliana. "You're more obedient. Every time you enter a city or town, you'll book a hotel or inn in advance. It's much easier for us." "No. Liliana couldn't help but blush at Noah's praise. As the king's knight, you should at least do this much. Looking at Liliana's shy appearance, Noah couldn't help but smile. After 3 months of getting along, Noah had already understood that although Liliana appeared to be rigid on the surface, she was full of the flavor of a young girl in her heart. At the very least, Noah knew that Liliana was not good at dealing with heartfelt praise from others. On the contrary, Liliana could calmly accept the praise of her achievements as if prodigy. Perhaps it was because to Liliana, it wasn't an achievement to be shy about, but an achievement to be proud of. A knight? After hearing Liliana's words, Erica looked at Liliana with a teasing look. Not a servant, but a knight. Cut the crap. Liliana glared at Erica. After such a long time, your mouth is still as dishonest as ever. Well, aren't you the same, Lily? Erica retorted calmly. You should change your habit of speaking without thinking when you're angry. Our king is still around. Upon hearing that, Liliana became even angrier, but she also began to have scruples about Noah. She could only shut her mouth and grumble unhappily. I'm going to purchase some necessities tomorrow in case it's inconvenient to go to a rural area with nothing like before. Then I'll have to trouble you, Lily. Erica waved her hand. That kind of job of buying things in the noisy downtown is really not suitable for me. As a noble lady, I should eat in a high-class restaurant or go shopping in a famous commercial center. You're so annoying. Liliana replied in a displeased tone. You're just lazy. Noah spread his hands helplessly as he watched the two beautiful ladies, one in gold and one in silver, start their daily bickering. All right, go in and rest. We'll only stay in this city for a day before continuing our journey. Upon hearing this, Erica and Liliana looked at Noah with a strange expression. You're right. Erica shrugged. We should only stay for a day. That's right, we should. Liliana sighed. If there aren't any accidents, wait, don't say such ominous words. I really don't want any accidents to happen. We'll only stay here for a day. Perhaps it was because he was recalling his experiences in the past 3 months, but a shadow appeared on Noah's face. If possible, I really don't want to have anything to do with gods and mythical beasts. After saying that, Noah walked into the hotel with the amused Erica and Liliana. Unfortunately, Noah's prayer was destined not to be fulfilled. Chapter 527. It was nighttime. In one of the rooms of the hotel that Liliana had booked, Noah was sitting on the bed, flipping through a book. Of course, it was a book that recorded the myths of some gods in the mythological system. In the past 3 months, whenever Noah was free, he would ask Erica and Liliana to provide him with books on the mythological system so that he could memorize the knowledge of various gods in his mind. Needless to say, this was to prepare for the golden sword that could only be used in the form of a warrior. Although Erica and Liliana had the magic of Professor, and the two girls had also learned all kinds of knowledge related to God since they were young, they could use Professor at any time to provide Noah with the knowledge needed to forge a sword, but it had to be done through kissing. Not to mention whether Erica and Liliana would mind this matter, and whether Noah would mind this matter, the fact that he had to rely on the help of others to use the form of a warrior made Noah quite uncomfortable. It was not that Noah hated other people's help, nor did he disdain to be helped by others. Noah naturally knew how important companions were. So, of course, Noah was happy to have companions by his side to help him. The reason why Noah felt uncomfortable was because of his cautious and strong character. After all, who could guarantee that a companion who could help him would be by his side at a critical moment? It was impossible for Erica and Liliana to stay by Noah's side all the time, and it was absolutely impossible for Noah to happen to have companions who could use techniques similar to Professor and who knew the knowledge of gods every time he fought, right? Does that mean that Noah won't be able to fight without the help of others? Noah did not like the feeling of not being able to control things. Instead of waiting for someone to help him during a battle, it was better to make good use of the idle time so that he could fight alone even without companions. That was Noah's personality. Besides, Noah had a very high understanding and memory. Not to mention other things, if it was learning something, it would be very fast. Therefore, the warrior avatar was very suitable for Noah. Compared to thinking about how to make the knight's sword come into contact with the opponent to activate the Black Tea King's ability, the warrior's sword could be prepared in advance, and the condition to use it was also a test of Noah's memory, so Noah was more inclined towards the latter. Although it was a pity that he did not have the ability to plunder other people's abilities like the Black Tea King, now that he had the authority of the 10 incarnations, Noah had a lot of abilities. There was no need to think about plundering other people's abilities anymore. Noah understood the principle of biting off more than one could chew. Gotcha. While Noah was still flipping through the books and memorizing the knowledge of every god in his mind with his powerful memory and comprehension, the door of Noah's room was opened with a slight sound. Outside the door, Liliana walked into Noah's room with a tray. On the tray were some dishes and a cup of fragrant black coffee. When he heard the sound of the door opening, Noah guessed who it was. He didn't know if it was because Liliana had a better impression of him after 3 months of being together, or Liliana's so-called responsibility as a knight was causing trouble. About 1 or 2 months ago, Liliana would usually prepare supper and a cup of black coffee for Noah when Noah was resting. Moreover, it was all made by Liliana herself. Lily. Noah, who closed the book, looked at Liliana, who walked in and smiled helplessly. Did you prepare supper for me again? Yes, Liliana put the tray in front of Noah and said righteously for the umpteenth time. Taking care of the king's life is also a knight's responsibility. No, that's not a knight's responsibility anymore, right? Noah complained for the umpteenth time. If I remember correctly, that should be the responsibility of the butler and the maidservant, right? If you treat me as an ordinary knight, I'll be very troubled, Liliana said seriously. Only an outstanding knight can take care of the master's life well. I'm at most your employer, right? Noah sighed. When did I become your master? No. Liliana's serious face slowly disappeared and turned into a bashful expression. It's unknowingly like that, right? There will be all kinds of situations on my side, right? Miss Liliana. Noah laughed dryly. I don't know what you're talking about. In short, as your knight, your follower, it's my duty to take care of your life. Liliana began to twist her words as though she couldn't find any words to refute. You're the king. At times like this, you should show the magnanimity of a king and shoulder all the problems with ease. This again. It's really difficult to be a king. Noah shook his head with a wry smile, but he still picked up the cutlery and tried a mouthful of Liliana's cooking. At this moment, Liliana's expression relaxed and she asked with anticipation and nervousness. How is it? It's not the first time I've eaten your cooking. Haven't you commented on it many times in the past? Noah picked up the black coffee that Liliana brewed and took a sip. Actually, I'm also quite surprised that you're so good at cooking. Erica, the missy, wouldn't spend her time on boring things like cooking. Instead of cooking personally, Erica should be more willing to spend her time choosing the clothes to wear, right? As for Liliana, Noah thought that a serious and strict person like her would be more willing to spend her time on improving her swordsmanship and magic. But in the end, Liliana was very good at cooking and even housework, giving off the vibe of a young lady. I know who you're comparing me to, but if possible, I really don't want you to compare me to that woman. Liliana was speechless as though she saw through Noah's thoughts. That vixen doesn't understand the manners of a young lady at all. She teases others with a devilish smile and makes others fall into a bottomless hell. That's the nature of that vile woman. Please don't compare me to her. Indeed, rather than saying that Erica's character is gorgeous, it's more like saying that she's cunning, Noah shrugged. But in my opinion, there are indeed many aspects of both of you that are worthy of being compared to each other. Is that so? Liliana frowned and her tone was filled with displeasure. What are you referring to? The most obvious thing is your talent in swordsmanship and magic. Everyone knows that you two are the only prodigies in Italy, so it's normal to compare the two of you, right? Noah said casually while sipping his black coffee. Apart from that, you don't have much overlap in other aspects, but each of you has something that you're good at. Erica has an extraordinary talent in socializing, and she's been in charge of communicating with the big shots in the past 3 months, which saved me a lot of trouble. However, she's not good at delicate work. On the contrary, although you're not good at feigning civility with others, you're very good at delicate work. You're also very good at housework and cooking, which complements Erica perfectly. Noah put down the black coffee in his hand and cast his gaze at Liliana, who was still frowning. I think Erica must be very clear about this in her heart, which is why she's focused on dealing with the big shots of the various magic associations and left me in your care. To be honest, the two of you, one in charge of external affairs and the other in charge of internal affairs, have really helped me a lot. Nguyen suddenly smiled. In my opinion, both of you are excellent knights. Be it the same martial arts or the things that you're good at, I always feel that without the two of you, I wouldn't be able to read as leisurely as I am now. I'm very grateful to both of you. Liliana's tightly furrowed brows slowly relaxed, and she sighed. Since you've already said that, what else can I say? You don't have anything to say, but I have a lot to say. Noah changed the topic. Actually, I've always wanted to ask you a question. Liliana was taken aback. I hope you can answer it seriously. Noah looked straight at Liliana. Do you really think it's good to be by my side? You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.